Recording in progress.
All right, we're just going to give a minute for the attendees to populate before we call the meeting to order. All right, I don't see any more attendees jumping on, so I think if we're all good and Iris is ready, we can go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Thank you,
Yes.
Maggie.
I am ready. Thank you.
So I'll now call to order this regular meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission. It's Monday, June 12th, 2023, and approximately 6:32 p.m.
Okay, please be advised that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of the time, date, and place of this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission has been sent to the Jersey Journal, the Jersey City Reporter, and El Especialito on Friday, June 9th. Same notice was provided to the city clerk for posting on the bulletin board outside of the clerk's office in City Hall and on the city website. I have proof of this notice in evidence, which Iris, we can mark as B1.
B1 is received and marked.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to a roll call attendance. Commissioner Amatuza.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Blazak,
Here.
Commissioner Cronin,
Here.
Commissioner Gunther,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Sakam,
Here.
Commissioner Sankamp.
Here.
Okay, Commissioner Garriga is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, and Chairman Gordon.
Present.
Okay, there are 9 members of the commission in attendance tonight. 5 affirmative votes are needed for a certificate of appropriateness. Okay, moving down on the agenda, we have the minutes from May 15th. If anyone has any questions, corrections, anything like that. If not, staff recommends a motion for approval.
Motion. Second.
Okay. Commissioner Amatuza,
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Recuse.
Okay. Commissioner Sakam,
I'm going to recuse as well.
do you guys mean recuse or abstain?
Abstain. Thank you.
Abstain. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Sankamp.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Garriga is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, and 2 abstentions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, that's right. The minutes from the May 15th meeting are approved. All right. Copies of correspondence and all application materials are listed at the highlighted links on the agenda. At this time, staff has no announcements, so we can move into open public comment.
Maggie, I just have the one brief announcement.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So I did receive a request to take tonight's applications out of order. And in the interest of efficiency, I'm going to grant that request and take old business item B, which is H22-429 218 Fifth Street, before old business item A, which is H21-354 591 Montgomery Street.
Thanks, Robert. All right. So let's go to open public comment. HPC staff reminds any members of the public that this section of the agenda is for items not listed on tonight's agenda. So this would be for open public comment for things that are not on tonight's agenda. So nothing for 218 Fifth, nothing for 591 Montgomery, or nothing for 16 Bright Street. This would be items not on the agenda. So if there are any members of the public who would like to speak regarding matters of historic preservation not on the agenda, you can use the raised hand function at the bottom of the screen, or you can press *9 if you're on the phone. All right, So I do see one hand raised. So prior to promoting the public, staff will just go over public comment, decorum and rules. Members of the public are given 5 minutes to address the commission. We will promote you to panelist and we'll swear you in, have you spell your name for the record, and then your 5 minutes will begin. If you have any questions about anything, they're to be addressed to the chair, so Commissioner Gordon, or Chairman Gordon rather. And at the end of all public comments, we can answer those questions as is necessary. All right, so the first hand I see raised is the Office of Councilman Gilmore. So I'm gonna go, I'm sorry, before we do that, someone needs to make a motion to open the public.
Motion.
Second.
All right, I got Commissioner Lewis and Commissioner Gunther. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, Councilman Gilmore, Office of Councilman Gilmore, I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi, Erica. We just need to swear you in first.
Okay.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your full name for me, spell your last.
Erica Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, hi. So I'm here just to make a general statement. I'm going to be posing this statement to posing this suggestion or recommendation to all of the boards across Jersey City's departments, planning, zoning, historic preservation, JCRA. As land use is a very sensitive subject in Jersey City and especially Ward F. Our constituents justly have fears of gentrification. They have fears of being displaced. They have fears of this community growing and kind of outgrowing them. And I just want each department and board to try to go above and beyond when it comes to communicating the activities of the board and the agenda. I understand the Sunshine Law is something that all boards, keep in mind when they're marketing, but the Sunshine Law is also over 30 years old. And I just want to challenge each board and each department to do more when it comes to marketing. I appreciate being emailed the agenda. I appreciate the post in the either on the website or
I believe Ms. Walker is frozen.
Erica, I don't know if you're frozen on your end as well, but you did break up.
okay.
The last thing we heard was you
so
appreciate, I did pause your time. The last thing we heard was that you appreciate being emailed the agenda.
And posting in the newspaper actually isn't public because you actually have to purchase the newspaper every day to make sure you don't miss any announcements. So I just wanted to know if just want to make the request either a marketing department or to hire a marketing person for land use, especially so they can promote items on the agenda, even create social media content like flyers that list the agenda items as opposed to a PDF. Also reaching out to the office of each ward when items are on the agenda in those particular wards. And not just the council people, but reaching out to neighborhood block associations and other neighborhood condo associations, so that the community can know and the community can participate. Oftentimes the community doesn't participate because they just don't know, or they don't know enough in time. So I think we should just be doing our part. We should all be doing our part to promote these opportunities to be involved and engaged in what we're doing. So that's just what I want to share. Support the residents surrounding the 591 Montgomery project and look forward to that hearing.
Great, thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
All right. So I see no other hands raised. If we want to make a motion to close public comment.
Motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. So I will, there were no specific questions there. I will just say that communication to the public is one of the things that we're hoping to address within our master plan element revision. It's one of the things that we're actively seeking feedback from the public on that survey. So it's something that we'll be taking a look at in the very near future. All right. That being said, I believe we can go ahead and jump right into old business. Robert, if you want to call the case in the revised order.
Sure, I would just to add to what you said, Maggie, the decision about whether to meet virtually or in person is not made by the commission itself, but I will say that I find that meeting in this virtual format really helps make the meetings more accessible to larger numbers of people. So while there's something lost with it not having the meetings in person, I do like that we're able to have greater attendance and engagement. So I hope that'll continue for the time being, speaking for myself. Moving to old business, case H22-429. The applicant is Ankala Malalari, AIA, on behalf of Sean Vakil and Fernanda Zapata, owners. The address is 218 Fifth Street. And this is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for the rehabilitation and alteration of an altered circa 1865 wood frame 3-bay Greek Revival vernacular variant townhouse in the Harsimus Cove Historic District, with the construction of a new rear addition and a new full depth rooftop addition over the existing 2.5-story building to accommodate the conversion of the present one family to a 2-family residence. The front facade stone face and damaged brick will be removed and either repaired or replaced with a new brick facade with cast brown stone water table, lintels, and sills. A new cornice and a new masonry bluestone stoop will be constructed. New ironwork and new wood siding at the western and northern facades are being proposed. This was previously carried from the April 3rd, 2023 regular HPC meeting.
Chuck, I promoted Ankala. Is there anyone else you'd like me to promote?
No, nobody else at this time.
Okay, great. And then let's just swear in Ankala and then we can get started.
Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please get your full name for me. Spell your last.
Ankala Malalari, last name M-A-L-E-L-L-A-R-I.
And your first name is E-N-K-E-L-A.
E-N-K-E-L-A. Yep.
Thank you. And your address, please?
59 Lincoln Park in Newark, New Jersey.
Thank you. Please proceed. Witness is sworn.
Okay, if I could just make some opening comments. For the record, Charles Harrington of Connell Foley on behalf of the applicant. For the benefit of the board, while this application was carried from the April 3rd meeting, some board commission members may recall that it was before the commission back in December, and the application presented at that time was carried to a future date. There were some comments from the commission and staff that they wanted the applicant to look into. And during this period of time, I believe or hope that we have addressed those. Specifically, there was a request about the gate at the front of the property as part of the renovation and rehabilitation. Also, there was a question as to the size of the second floor windows. You'll see tonight that the second floor windows are remaining in the size that they are the original windows. And then Kella will walk you through how that is going to be achieved. There's also concern, the presentation in December had a full addition on the third story. That addition or proposed addition has been moved back and it is positioned so that it will not be visible from the other side of the street. So I believe those are the major issues that we've been working with staff to address. And we want to, then present tonight, as part of this presentation. With that said, I'm going to, hand it off to Ankella so she can walk you through. It's a change project. So walk you through what we're proposing.
But before you start your presentation, Ankala, Maggie, I think this was an application that Commissioner Sakong and I had missed the meeting for. Do we need to affirm that we reviewed the transcript?
Yes.
Okay, so I can affirm for myself that I did review the transcript.
Thank you for reading my mind, Commissioner Gordon. I did not. And so I leave it to the applicant to determine whether or not they're comfortable with me reviewing this application without having reviewed the transcript.
I mean, I can say I'm comfortable with it because there is, changes in what was presented at the last HPC commission. I think they're substantial enough that it really, you are looking at kind of at a new proposal, a new project. So, I mean, I'll defer to Maggie and Dan maybe on that, but I on behalf of the applicant, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Chuck, in my mind, there are substantial changes to this application. So if you're comfortable with it, I don't see any issue proceeding.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone see my screen really well? Yes, okay, great. So as Chuck mentioned, I want to focus our conversation today on the changes that we did, and I think I could touch upon a little bit more on some other stuff if other commissioners need to have more information. So the proposed revision that we're presenting here today is a setback on the new addition on the third floor, and we're going to set it back 16.5 feet to make sure that we are missing the visibility of this addition from the right of way. And we are setting back an outdoor deck 10 feet as required by the local ordinance. Whereas the rest of the building, really from what we proposed in the original design, doesn't really change. We also, some comments that we got from the commissioners at the last meeting was to focus a little bit more on replicating the conditions of the existing photo that we have from 1937. And one of those was the railing that was expressed to bring back to the property, which I'll show you that we did. And also this scored kind of block pattern on the ground floor that you'll see in the proposed addition. So I want to move on to the next page, which is the proposed floor plans. The first unit is on the garden level. This proposal did not change from what we presented to the commission last time. And also we have the first floor where we are going to reconstruct the driveway going up the stairs. And that didn't really change the layout of the first floor with a small deck in the back for a barbecue access. Second floor is where we have 2 bedrooms and an office space. This is the existing second floor. And then the proposed addition is the third floor. In this addition, you'll see that we have 1 master suite and a sitting room, as well as an outdoor deck, which you have access from the seating area. And this is where we have that 16.5 setback and a 6'6" rooftop deck, which is enough space to put some chairs and a table to be outdoors. When we're looking at the existing condition, as we have communicated with staff, myself and Chuck, it was expressed that the second floor window size be maintained. So we made sure to address that in the proposed design, as well as recreating the railing with the addition of a 3-foot gate in the front to access the front steps. So as you see in this new revised design, we're going to accommodate code requirements with respect to egress by having a custom casement window in the bedroom in the front, while maintaining the geometry and the scale of those windows to be more in line with the existing property. We are going to try to recreate also the cornice that we were able to identify in the photo. And if we see some more information once the demolition of that beautiful permastone comes down, we'll have more conversations with staff on how we could do that even better. We are proposing a railing, a glass railing for the new deck with lots of windows for the addition, and then a tapered roof to make sure that when you are standing from directly in front of the building from across the street, that this addition does not become visible. We want to show a bit of a color rendering to give everyone an idea of what we're thinking, and hoping that we'll discover a good condition brick that could be repaired. We have the 3-coat stucco at the base with the scored block and the arched window top, and then the smaller windows that I mentioned on the second floor. What we want to show, like I know this is a bit skewed because there's trees and it's hard to get a picture, but just wanted to give you guys an idea that, as we all know, when we're looking at this property from the west side, the addition is always going to be visible, but set back just to show a little bit of the scale in relationship to the adjacent properties. The rear proposal didn't change. That wood siding is going to wrap around, trying to include as much glazing as possible to get natural daylight in relationship to what the original house has with the smaller windows. And when we're moving on to the west side elevation, this is where you'll see where the existing house height remains. We're setting back and tapering the roof area to really kind of pull that away from the visible right away with the glass railing for that small deck area. And then we have the addition in the back. So we want to recreate that railing that we see in the picture with the gate. So we wanted to introduce that new detail to this presentation, as well as bringing in the cornice. Again, we're going to do some additional investigation when we do the demolition of the facade, but this is what we can make out really from that black and color picture right now. Those are really the major changes that we captured from our last meeting, as well as the comments that we got from staff dated 4/3, which was again the gate, improving the sight line for the addition, and the second floor windows. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to address, and if I went a little bit too fast on some things, let me know and I can go back.
Oh, I have a question about the casement window on the front.
Sure.
And that's being necessitated by, is there something going on at the interior that you're changing that's requiring this? That if you weren't making that change, you wouldn't have to do this to the window, or?
It's a bedroom. And a
So
bedroom
that's.
a bedroom needs a second means of egress. So your first means is your stairs going down the stairs, and if there's an emergency and let's say the stairs are blocked,
There's no way to accommodate that without a casement window?
The casement will still appear as a double hung window on the outside. It will just function as a casement, but no, it's too small if we're going to follow the geometry of the current window, and the current code does not allow that to be
okay. And in that case, is the lower sash of is it constructed in a way that it reads as a true double hung window where the glass is in two different planes? Or is it all in one plane?
That's going to be the goal, that it still needs to appear like a double hung window. So you still have to have the two separate planes for the glazing.
Okay, so that's something that exists or that can be manufactured.
It's a custom window, so yeah, it's been done before.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Are there other questions from commissioners?
I have a question. If you can please bring up the 1938 photograph.
Good.
Are the window heights that you are proposing the same as this infill picture? Or are you breaking out that infill and going back to the original length of the window?
So for the first floor, we're gonna go back to the
On the
original
parlor
length.
level, yes.
Yeah,
Okay. That was my question.
sure.
I have a question. Did you construct a mock-up to kind of see what the height is going to be and ensure that there's not going to be any visibility from directly across the street?
So we did a digital test with our camera that the 16.5 does show that you can't see from the street, which is how we established these guidelines for 16.5 feet. Again, just the digital camera, with the 60-foot right away, I didn't want to really present it and show you like, this is what my model said. I think it looks much better and better to prove in section, or this elevation, to show that this is the goal. And we're and I know my clients are happy to work with staff when we get to this point to make sure that we don't go too far ahead in the project, make sure it's not visible. That's a very big point in this project, to make sure that we achieve what we're presenting today.
Okay, and I get this question, maybe it's more for staff than the architect, but have you seen instances where a bedroom needs a casement window at the front facade, and has that been something that staff has done at the staff level? Because I don't recall seeing this presented to us in the past, so I'm just curious if that's something that's come up and how that's been dealt with.
I personally haven't. Dan, I don't know. Oh, Dan, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I have only once run into this particular type of a situation, and it was in a house on Wayne Street where the window was, I believe, less than 30 inches tall. It was an eyebrow window on a Greek Revival house. But if the architect believes that this is required and is going to promote public safety, if a casement window with differential planes can be constructed, which I understand has been used in other jurisdictions, staff does not have an issue with the architect's solution to a issue that she is concerned about professionally.
Okay, thank you.
So there's really not much we could do about that because the code requires the 5 square inches of opening space, square feet of opening space. So if this were to be a true double hung and you opened up that bottom sash, there's not enough square footage for it to be code compliant. And the renovation of this property is so extensive that it basically is going to count as a new building when a building official is going to look at it. So safety, as a professional, safety comes first. So we have to find another means to accommodate what staff was looking for, which was a smaller window to meet what was in the picture and safety for the future of this house and those occupants.
Okay, so just to reiterate, what you're telling us is the casement window as a means of egress and the size that's required for that to happen is triggered by this addition?
It's not the addition. Any renovation would have required that.
Any renovation?
Yeah, this is the existing building and replacement of the exact size of the pre-existing windows, correct, Nicola?
Correct.
I guess I don't understand how this is a requirement, because it just seems like something that would come up on every other application we ever look at.
So depends, was there a bedroom in the other application? Maybe the other application had another window. These rooms don't have any other windows but the front, because the side of the property is on the lot line. So I can't put a window on the lot line.
I guess my question, is it related to interior walls being relocated? Because I feel like there are a lot of bedrooms in row houses in Jersey City with 2 windows at the front facade. That's not a very uncommon layout.
But
So
how big is that window?
I'm failing to understand how it's, I mean, I understand what you're saying about the sort of area requirement, but I'm
Right.
not understanding like how the code is suddenly triggered to require that in a way that we don't more commonly see it.
It depends on how big the window is. When we measured the window that's there now, that window fails the current code requirements. So unless we open up the interior of the house and we see that the opening was different and maybe it was a little bit bigger, that we can pass the requirements for the proper egress square footage, then we'd be more than happy to continue to replace with a double hung. But the current condition of what we measured there now, and I don't anticipate finding anything different, is it's really smaller than it needs to be.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ankel, one of the issues here is if you proposed a bigger window similar to the first story, you could do your double hung window there. But
Absolutely.
then it takes, and it would be code compliant, but then it takes away from the historical significance of those smaller windows on the second floor. That's what staff explained to us, that it's reflective of this period of this type of house. So we're trying to accommodate meeting the building code while at the same time keeping them in the same size to meet the historical significance of those windows on the second floor.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with this, but I think what Commissioner Gunther is saying is that this seems like something that, like she said, would come up over and over again, and I don't think we've ever seen this. So I don't know if something's changed with the code recently, but there have certainly been other projects that have very similar conditions in terms of a bedroom. You know, again, I'm comfortable with this. I've seen casement windows that are simulated double hungs. I'm comfortable if you work with staff on the details, and also maybe just even, you know, submitting so that we can understand too later on, you know, maybe citing the code and sending that to staff so they have that, and you know, can make sure that that's correct and that we all understand this and can you know, better educate ourselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But otherwise, I mean, I think this is greatly improved from when we last saw this a few months ago. So I think I'm comfortable with this, with maybe some, you know, minor modifications and working with staff on some things.
So thank you.
I just had a question I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Amatuzzo's comment about the parlor level windows and the infill that that was shown in the 38 photograph. I just wanted to confirm what you were saying, because I don't see that in the current drawing, that those windows were going to go down to just above the water table. They're going to fill that. You're going to open them up so they're going to be taller, correct?
Windows are going to be taller. That is correct.
Right.
So,
Because I'm not seeing that in the current drawing. Is that something that was changed later?
so
and in the rendering.
this is the existing. So we
Mhm.
definitely went longer on the windows for the first floor.
Okay.
But
However,
if you look at the note, it says existing brown, oh, sorry, can you zoom back in there?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, existing brownstone windowsills to remain, which indicates to me that you're not lowering it. And in fact, if you just look at the distance between the top of existing parlor level and that sill versus the existing drawing, the distance between the existing parlor level and the bottom of that dashed zone indicating the infill area, it's quite a discrepancy, which may be a graphic one, but I think the note indicates that the sill remains.
And also without dimensions on the openings, it's difficult for us to tell.
So the dimensions of the windows are actually in plan. So you could see on the first floor, it's a 2 foot 8 inch wide by 5 foot 8 inch tall, which is about a little over a foot actually taller than the existing windows.
So it's not, just to be clear, so it's not that we're restoring the original dimensions of the parlor window, it's that you're extending some of that height down into that zone, but not all the way.
We're gonna keep the windows 2 feet above the floor. If they're anything taller than that, then they're gonna have to have a limit stop or some kind of guardrail. Again, another code thing. When your windows are too low, sorry, to the floor area. So that's why we are going to extend again to get more daylight to this front area. And I think I do show the sill. Oh, sorry, that was missing. But that's what we're at 2 feet from that floor area, which makes these windows taller than what the existing window is. But I do see what you're saying, because the infill that we can tell from the picture actually is much closer to that floor level. So we're not overtaking the entire infill area and make a super tall window.
So
Again, that's something I don't think we've ever heard before. And people restore their parlor windows all the time. And I think we usually either restore what was there historically, or we don't touch them at all. So I actually would not be comfortable with just pushing it down a foot. I think it either needs to match the historic dimensions, or you don't change those windows in terms of code. And I think there's a lot of discrepancies and a lot of things with these drawings that don't make a lot of sense, quite frankly. So
let me ask a question so I understand this correctly. So we either leave the window the same size that's there now, or we take the entire infill.
I think that's how we usually do it. When do we ever do it differently? And I'm asking maybe other commissioners. This is an approach I've never seen before.
yeah,
I agree
I
with you,
would,
Brian. I never have
Generally-
seen halfway, and I have never heard that this is a code issue with parlor floor windows being brought back to their original height. This is the first I'm hearing of both of these code issues, and I've been on this commission for 12 years. So I am really questioning, where does this code exist? Because I've
I'll
yet
be
to
happy
see
to
it.
share it with you.
so I'll just, from my perspective, I don't feel I need to comment on whether or not the limit stop has an impact on the historic preservation aspect of it. I don't really know that it does. So code limit stop or no limit stop, I would actually push to restore the parlor height window to the full height, period, and make it one of the conditions.
I think that's totally fine. Like, again, I know my clients are looking for more daylight to come into that facade, so it won't be an issue going with the taller window.
So I was going to echo Commissioner Sakong's comment about it being a condition of approval, that these 2 windows be put back to their original condition, and that should be based on site evidence, but it should be basically to the floor of the parlor. Also, if you find that you need to put that egress, change the double hung on the second floor for egress, I think we should also permit you to do, so you don't have to come back for it, but you could do an awning window if the configuration doesn't work for a casement. I think as an awning, it would work no matter what. In the custom, I've done it, so I know.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Would an awning meet the code though? Would it be able to open far enough to allow for someone to get out through the window?
It has to open fully. It just has to be able to open.
Okay.
Are there any other?
If I may
oh,
just
sorry.
add just one more comment. I mean, for future applications, I think having wall sections with dimensioned, floor to sill, and dimensions, not just sort of keyed, tags on the windows. It's very difficult for us to understand that that window tag was related to a dimension, as opposed to being an itemized, descriptor for a window schedule. So, I think it's important to make sure the application is complete. And I would recommend to the other commissioners that we also ask the applicant to submit the drawings with some of these dimension strings, floor to sill to header to floor to sill, just for staff to be able to have on record that these are reflecting what the applicant is actually testifying these represent.
Yeah, and the applicant can absolutely do that on the, for, the submittal plans for signature in the event this is approved.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments for the applicant? All right, hearing none. Chuck, does that conclude your testimony?
Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
All right, so we can move to open public comment. I do see a hand raised. Before we make a motion to open public comment, I'll just again briefly go over the rules for this. We'll promote you to a panelist. You do have to accept the panelist invitation. You can turn on your mic and camera. We'll swear you in. You'll state and spell your name for the record. If you have specific questions about the application, please address them to the chair, Mr. Gordon. At the end of the public comment period, we will address any questions. All right. The first hand I see raised is Doshi. Oh, I'm sorry. Can someone make a motion to open public comment?
I'll make a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. At some point tonight, I'll remember to do that first. We'll see. Okay. All right, Doshi, let's go ahead and get you sworn in.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name for me. Spell your last.
Sure. Adarsh Doshi, last name Doshi, D-O-S-H-I.
And please spell your first name for me.
Sure. Adarsh, A-D-A-R-S-H.
Thank you. And your address is, sir?
389 Washington Street,
Thank you.
apartment
Witness
23E.
23E.
Yep.
Thank you. Witness is sworn. Please proceed.
Okay. Your 5 minutes begins now.
Awesome. First of all, thanks for the commission for letting me join. And I appreciate the Fernanda and Sean for letting me speak. I lived in Jersey City since 2000, and when I got married in 2010, I moved my wife to New York, from New York to Jersey City. So love the town. We became homeowners in 2012, and I've seen a lot of changes that have happened in the city that allowed for growth, but also created a balance. A lot of what we've talking about here about is history. It's also allowed for economic balance and not pushing people out. I also love the fact that it brings the suburban activities to an urban environment because I have 2 kids. And it also fosters art, art in the town. Sean and Fernanda are great people for this because they live and breathe that. They build that community in New York City. And I'm super excited for them to come to Jersey City and provide that impact. And for me to kind of witness them thrive in Jersey City, which I've lived in for a long time, and I'm really glad that they're about to get into a home that's fully built soon, and just get through these proceedings. So just wanted to really kind of just share that, and that's it from my end.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. The next hand I see raised is Juliana. Go ahead and promote you.
Hello.
Wow.
Hello. Juliana, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name, spell your last.
Juliana Dawson, and my last name is spelled Dawson.
And your address, please?
319 7th Street, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Thank you.
I'm
Witness
sorry.
is sworn. Please proceed. Thank you.
Sorry, my husband just got home. The dog is going crazy. Okay, so I'm here today to speak about the proposed project at 218 5th Street. I live in the Hamilton Park neighborhood, and I walk by this site quite often. I work downtown by the waterfront, and I love walking through the historic neighborhood to get there. It's actually takes a little bit longer to go that way, but I always kind of go out of my way to walk that way because it's just so pleasant and I enjoy all the beautiful historic architecture. In looking at the plans that have been proposed today, I think that it would be a real elevation to this particular property to approve it. It's really interesting to see that photograph, from the 1930s, I think it was, and hear that the home was built in 1865. And the way that it stands now, there really isn't very much that's still viewable from the outside that displays any of those characteristics. The facade is kind of broken in a lot of places. The gate doesn't match. The materials don't match. And so I think what I saw today would be really beautiful and really just increase that historical look of the property and the block and the neighborhood in general. So I would, as a resident here, I think it would be great to see it passed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there are any additional members of the public who would like to speak regarding this application, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, you can press *9 if you're on the phone. All right, staff sees no additional hands raised and recommends a motion to close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, want to move into staff comments? Dan, you want to take it away?
Yes, the last page of my report, you can see staff comments. If the HPC finds that the application as presented would not have an adverse effect on the historic resource and the surrounding Harzmas Cove Historic District, the application may be approved with the following conditions, in my professional opinion. I'd like to note that conditions 1, 5, and 6 have been included in the updated drawings that were dated 6/7/23.
Dan, do you
But
think you can share your screen maybe so we can see see?
We're having a bit of a problem here. This should be in your report, the report that you were given, and I'm having a bit of a problem just staying on this meeting. So I do apologize.
Hold on, Brian, if you give me a second, I can pull it up on my end.
Okay.
All right, give me 1 second. All right, you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the last page. Dan, is it the last page or the last section?
It's the second to last page. It's page 11.
Okay. All right, I have it up on my end if you want to keep reading, Dan, just so everyone can follow along.
Conditions 1, 5, and 6 have been included on the updated drawings dated 6/7/23, and I would recommend that they still stay conditions of approval. 1, the proposed addition shall not be seen from the public right of way on 5th Street when viewed from the east or when viewed from directly across the street. If the addition is visible from the fence line directly across the street, the addition shall be in non-conformance with the certificate, and staff shall not be authorized to sign off on a certificate of occupancy. A roof plan clearly showing all vents and stacks is to be presented to the HPC as part of final construction documents. No vents, stacks, etc. are to be visible from the public right-of-way, whether on Fifth Street or when the building is viewed obliquely from the west. The architect and Keller Malari shall be retained during construction and shall submit a signed and sealed letter representing and noting that site construction was consistent with the work approved under the certificate of appropriateness before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The drawing shall be confirmed and corrected based on site evidence after careful investigatory demolition. Shop drawings previously approved by the architect as being in conformance with the certificate shall be provided to HPC staff for review and approval prior to the manufacture, purchase, or installation of the new windows at the front and the parlor and basement door, as well as the cornice and fence. The proposed new fence shall have an appropriate gate installed at the bottom of the stoop, leading to the entrance, following the historic paradigm of a direct entrance to the front stoop and parlor entrance. The second floor window sizes will not be altered. An appropriate alternative for fire egress, which respects the original window configuration, will be found if additional size for egress is necessary. I'd like to add that at the second floor window, either a awning or a casement which simulates a double hung window will be acceptable. Any proposed planting or landscaping shall conform with the City of Jersey City zoning, and for street trees, the City of Jersey City forestry standards. Details, specifications, and material submissions not currently submitted to and approved by the HPC under the certificate of appropriateness or changed during the course of construction are remanded back to the HPC. The next page.
Oops, scroll too far. There we go.
All physical material samples and specifications shall be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to submission of construction documents for permitting. Any changes or deviations from the approved drawings are to be clearly bubbled on the construction drawings and noted in an accompanied sign and seal letter from the architect addressed to staff for review. Depending on the degree of change or deviation, additional review by the HPC or the Historic Preservation Commission may be required. Upon final approval of the certificate by the HPC, any deviations from the granted approval must be approved by the HPC except in cases of emergency affecting the public safety, health, and welfare. Requests for deviations from the certificate are to be submitted through written request of the architect. Failure to follow these guidelines may result in the denial of a certificate of occupancy or the requirement that the applicant submit an application for the unapproved work before the commission in order to obtain a certificate of appropriateness for the said unapproved work. And the parlor windows are to be brought to the original height above the water table with either a window stop or an appropriate interior guard installed for safety.
I would also ask that the drawing set is resubmitted with the requested dimensions and details that we discussed.
Yes, dimensions are to be submitted on signature or construction drawings.
Okay, and those conditions would be acceptable.
Make a motion to approve the certificate with the conditions as set forth by staff.
I second.
All right. We'll move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Amatuzzo.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Sakong.
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak.
Aye.
Commissioner Sankamp.
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther.
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
All right, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The certificate of appropriateness with the conditions is approved.
Thank you, and thank you for
Thank you.
moving this up.
Great, thanks, guys. All right. Go ahead and call the next case.
All right, so I'm going to call case H21-354. The applicant is Jennifer Porter Esquire on behalf of Jones Hall Associates, LP owner. This is 591 Montgomery Street, the former Jersey City Medical Center complex. This application is for a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board for the subdivision of Lot 1 within the National and State Register listed former Jersey City Medical Center complex into 2 lots containing the contributing Jones Hall constructed circa 1932 and the proposed new construction of a 17-story mixed-use building with structured parking, a healthcare facility, and 98 residential units. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment and was carried from the regular HPC meeting of March 13th of this year.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also note that while I was present when this application was first heard, I also did not attend the March meeting when this was last heard. So happy to sit this one out if the applicant is uncomfortable. I also did not get a chance to review the transcript. So I leave it to the applicant and also to my fellow commissioners.
Does the applicant have any?
Jen, you're muted.
Hi, yes, good evening, Jen Porter on behalf of the applicant, Jones Hall Associates. Just to address the commissioner's comment, the applicant does not have any issue with Commissioner Sakong hearing this application this evening. We're partaking in the discussion this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Your audio quality is quite poor. You sound as if underwater.
No, we can't hear you at all, Ben.
How about this?
Much
Perfect.
better.
Okay, I changed the settings. Thank you. So just to repeat myself, Jen Porter on behalf of the applicant Jones Hall Associates. I'm an attorney with CSG Law. And we're here this evening in connection with the continuation of the review by the HPC for our application for Jones Hall at 591, 593 Montgomery Street. Just to address Commissioner Sakong's comments earlier, in case you didn't hear me, the applicant has no issue with him participating in the discussions this evening or any potential vote that may occur.
Very good, thank you. And just a reminder to everyone this evening, bear in mind, we do have a court reporter who's taking real-time transcripts, so try to speak at a reasonable pace. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Jen, I promoted Rich. Is there anyone else you would like me to promote?
No, that's it.
All right, so let's go ahead and get him sworn in and you guys can begin your testimony.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Garber, do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name, spell your last,
Richard Garber, Garber.
and your address, Mr. Garber.
83 Montgomery Street, Jersey City,
Okay.
702.
Thank you. Witness is sworn, please proceed.
All right, you guys should be free to present.
Okay, great. So before Mr. Garber presents this evening, I just wanted to take this opportunity to give a brief opening statement. As the chairman indicated, we last appeared in front of the HPC back in March. Prior to that, we had appeared initially in front of the HPC in January of 2022. At both of those meetings, we did receive substantial comment from both the commissioners as well as members of the public. We have had an opportunity over the course of the past several months to significantly address the comments that we received from both the commissioners and the public. and did have an opportunity last week to meet with a few individuals from the Beacon to address our revised plans and walk them through some of our proposed changes. Just by way of background, after that meeting back in March, we did meet with HPC staff to address the comments in order to also incorporate staff changes as well and input and guidance with respect to our proposal. Some of the changes that we're going to discuss this evening include significant reductions to the massing of the building, changing the building typology, reducing the medical usage, increasing setbacks and proximity to adjacent buildings, as well as eliminating the usage of glass at the corners. Mr. Garber is going to detail these revisions as he walks the commissioners through the plans. As you'll see in his presentation, careful consideration has been given with respect to the proposed design, not only to comply with the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines, which was always the goal here in connection with this proposal, but more specifically, and what we hope to convey this evening, was to address the prior comments received from both the commission and from the public. So without further comment, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Garber.
Great, thank you, Jen. I'm going to just share my screen to get started, and I'd like to thank the board for hearing our application tonight. As has been said, we have met with the community. We've really tried to hear the concerns of both the community and the board, and have substantially reduced the building in many different ways. I'm going to show you, I'm going to start with a PowerPoint, and my goal here is to be fairly quick and just outline the changes. I do have further documentation in the PowerPoint going back to the previous presentations we've made, should we need to refer to that. So, and I think just right off the bat, two of the very important and very significant things that we've done here is we've decreased the total building square footage, the total building area, from 208,315 square feet to a fairly lean 182,754 square feet. That's a decrease of about 25,561 square feet. More than half an acre has been removed from this building. And that's largely, and somewhat regrettably to an extent, by decreasing the medical use from what was originally proposed as 27,102 square feet down to 7,184 square feet, which is a decrease of 19,918 square feet. And that's really in speaking with the Beacon and hearing their concerns about that medical use. I'll go into that. So to start, I'm not going to show a site plan, but I am going to show, as a way of addressing one of the comments from the board, our site plan, which is this zigzag structure site that you see here outlined in red, 593 Montgomery it's called. And what we've done is there was a comment about tall buildings being placed in other open lots on the Montgomery corridor, on the south side of the Montgomery corridor. And I stated then, I don't think it's possible. And I have this graphic to kind of try to back that up, where the large sites that you see go from left to right. The Great Lawn of the Beacon, which is Beacon property, and is a very nice open public space. Our site, which is what we're talking about here. And then we have a parking lot for a housing authority operated complex, which takes up that whole block owned by the city. And then finally, the high school, the Hudson County Vocational High School that's there. Again, a large parking lot. So I do want to reiterate my initial thought that there really are not sites where tall buildings can be mimicked by a precedent of this board supporting this application, if it chooses to do so. Now, in terms of some of the zoning tabulation and metrics, I've highlighted in red the other key issues. I talked a little bit about the decrease in area. the medical use in the whole building. We have edited the front yard setback on Cornelius Ave to 126 feet 8 inches. Which, excuse me, that was previously 126 feet 8 inches or 17 feet 2 inches to Jones Hall at its lowest point. I'll have some plans to demonstrate this. We've increased that to 129.11 or 20 feet 5.5 inches. Modest increase, but an increase nonetheless in terms of that separation. The rear yard setback, and we're going to assume that that's on the south facing elevation, was previously 15 feet 3 inches. That has now been changed to 25 feet. So that's a more significant change, which again, I will demonstrate in plan shortly. The building stories measured from grade has actually increased by 11 feet. And so we've gone from 17 stories at Montgomery to now 18 stories at Montgomery. And I'll show you why, because the building form has really slendered. I also have some models to hopefully share once the PowerPoint is done. We still have 4 subsurface stories at Cornelius of parking. The building height, as I suggested, because of that has increased about 11 feet from 203 10 3/4 to 214 10 3/4. That's not a noticeable difference, as I think I'll hopefully be able to show. And then finally, the building coverage on the ground floor has been decreased somewhat significantly, I think, from 37% to 33%, from about 10,399 square feet to 9,438 square feet, which is just under 1,000 square feet of reduction there. All else we'll say is keeping the same. And what does that look like? Hopefully you'll see in this diagram that the building has been substantially slendered. And we thought we'd show this as a way of getting into the design. What you see on the left is the previous iteration, which you saw in March, and then you saw 2 Januaries before that. And now our current proposal is really more of a traditional bar or rectangular form, slightly wedged just because of the site, but a rectangular form nonetheless, that transitions from, as you can see on the right, a U shape into a bar that gets less and less deep as you sort of move up. And that also allowed us to create another 2 steps in the building, whereas previously we were stepping twice, 3 times if you count the base. Now we are stepping 4 times or 5 times if you count the base. So I think that this diagram hopefully makes clear some of the general changes we've made to the building. Now, in terms of the overall comparison of elevations, I did mention that the building got 11 feet taller, so you can see that here. But you really see on the lower graphics here, the lower elevations, that slendering, that stepping forward that occurs. So we're holding the Montgomery Street edge, but we are substantially moved away from the entire Beacon site, let alone the dentistry building, which is the closest structure. And we've also moved modestly further away from Jones Hall. Now I'm going to go through that in plans. Briefly, parking is parking. We have picked up, the parking has stayed at 75 spaces, but we've picked up more parking to be distributed to residences. Basically, we are still compliant with parking. We have extra parking now for residences because we've decreased the medical use so substantially, that 19,000 feet. The other thing that's happened, and again, I'm not going to go through this so much in terms of the lower level plans, the subsurface plans, but the entire core has been moved forward. And that has to do with, if I show you the model, that stepping up and that making the building really kind of occupy Montgomery Street and move it away from the Beacon. So that carries up here. Trash room, bike parking remains the same. And then when we get to the ground floor, you see here, and this is going to be the sequence of plans that I show you, there's always going to be the before on the left and the after on the right. And so by blurring your eyes, you just see that there's more green, right? There's more open space. There's more of a public plaza around us. And you can see that the that setback, which went, as I said before, from 15 feet to 25 feet at the Montgomery Street grade, increases our building to building dimension from the dentistry building from 21 feet 5 inches to 31 feet 5 inches, which we think is significant. That 10 feet does make a difference. Now, in terms of that floor, the ground floor is really the only floor now that we have as healthcare. It's that 7,184 feet that I talked about. And that is still imagined as exam rooms, offices, with the healthcare lobby and entered on the northwest corner of the building. So if you can see my mouse, it's here. So it's stayed in that location here. The setback to Beacon Way has actually decreased modestly to 10 feet, and that 10 feet is what is required in the zoning. So it's not significant, but it is something that I want the board to know. And you'll recall that Beacon Way is a privately operated street. It's a fairly wide street. So there's no encroachment by nudging our building a little bit over to the left to make a little bit more space between us and Jones Hall, which is our sister building. Now, as we go up, you start seeing on the second floor that setback again from 21 feet 8 inches to 31 feet 5 inches. So that 10 feet right there. And you see that the gym that we had as an amenity space has now been moved to the rear of behind the elevator lobby. The elevator lobby and stair lobbies are in orange. The gym is now in green. And that carries up to the third floor, where again, we have that third floor is still that kind of lower base portion, 31 feet 5 inches in the rear. We have a 768 square foot amenity space. And then at the fourth floor is really when that U that you showed in my in that axonometric diagram really becomes clear, where we have a common roof deck now proposed. And at this point, we are almost 40 feet away from the dental building. So again, we're slendering the building and we're kind of moving the entire mass forward to Montgomery Street. So you see that here. We've also added some dimensions for clarification. At our closest on this level, we are 20 feet from Jones Hall. And at our furthest distance on this level, the fourth floor, we are 28 feet 5 inches, so almost 30 feet. So that also is a significant change. That U shape carries up for another floor, one more floor to the fifth floor. And you see here how we do get a little private deck here, but the dimensions, again, significant. Now to the sight line on the left, we go from 22 feet to 32 feet, and the distance from the dental college building at this point, 39 feet, almost 40 feet. So again, we're moving up and we get further as we go. This is our sixth floor plan where we're making use of the roof of our U to create some private decks. And at this point, we are 50 feet away from the lot line, 57 feet away from the dental building. And just as a quick note, as the board knows, the standard of rear yard setbacks on typical lots, 30 feet. And that average allows for the distance between buildings to be 30 plus 30 or 60 feet. That's what we're trying to do here. We get pretty close. We get to 57 feet, which is actually quite far away, given the closeness of some of the buildings to one another on the Beacon campus. That continues up the dimensions on floors 7 to 14, where you really see that square turn into a bar. Go from are carried up. So we're still 57 feet away from the dental building. And then our top floors, 15 through 18, we do show a little deck because we're setting back further as we sort of symmetrically telescope up. And you see here, we are now a full 60 feet 5 inches. And which is why I brought up that setback issue before. So now we are slightly over what is a typical setback between buildings that face one another on rear yards. So we think we've done so in an appropriate way. The 16th floor, 17th floor, we have one more modest setback, telescoping up to get our final distance almost to 65 feet, 64 feet, 11 inches. And then we have our 18th floor plan, which is a new floor, right? We were previously at 17, we have 18 floors. The number of units haven't changed, and that's why we actually have this additional floor. We are still imagining a common roof deck. Now, what does this look like in terms of the building? You'll see here a before and after rendering of the building from Montgomery Street, where you can see Jones Hall, our sister building behind. And you can see that the building really has slendered, right? The depth of the building as it projects south or backwards is considerably less. You'll also note that the majority of the corners of the building are now opaque. We've closed off the corners as we go up. And the reason why we stop them where we do, which I'll show you in an elevation shortly, is actually to get some parity with a setback from Jones Hall. So it's a contextual sort of cue. Now, what that looks like in the context of the rest of the buildings, we're still well under that 211 feet, that extra 214 feet, excuse me, that extra 11 feet. We're still in some instances 100 feet lower than the buildings at the Beacon. And you can see the elevation iterations from 2 iterations ago to the last iteration you saw in March to our current proposal. Again, what's important here is that the sides of the building are made opaque, and you can see that there is a step in Jones Hall that we are mimicking. We are holding at the approximately, I think that's the 14th floor of the building, something like that, where we're setting back and we're stopping that glass. Corners are solid as we come around. This is the elevation facing west or Beacon Way. And again, you really see that kind of slendering that we've done here. Following around to the south elevation, so this is facing the dental college. The linearity of the building and the definition of a base, a middle, and a top still carries. But again, we've made opaque those ends. I previously used the term dematerialized. They're very much material corners now. And then you see that again in the elevation facing east, which is the elevation facing Jones Hall. This brings me to another question that I got from the board that was asked last time, which is, well, how do you deal with all the vision glass where you're facing the building? Well, now we've pulled the building away. I talked about that a maximum of 64 feet, 11 inches difference between these two buildings. And you also can see that we've narrowed the windows and decreased the amount of glass on this face also. We did a study, and we believe that the windows are non-aligned, meaning that the windows do not happen directly in front of windows that exist on Jones Hall. In terms of the singular elevations, I'll go through them quickly. The materials haven't changed. I've talked at length about those materials, and I just want to go through the renderings, which have all been updated. This is our rendered view from Summit and Fairmount. This was the easiest one to update because our building is not seen. It is still not seen. You can see it dashed in white right around the Fairmount sign here. So that is still not seen. Here is a view looking from Montgomery and Baldwin. And what's important about this view that I want to bring up is we were able to look at, this is very, very much coordinated with world coordinates and so forth in these views. There was a question about how much our building will block Jones Hall when looking from the west to the east. And obviously we're putting a building west of Jones Hall, so we will be blocking it. But I think what you see here is from the sidewalk on the other side of Montgomery Street, you can actually see clearly the view of Jones Hall. And that's something that we were able to just confirm by really looking and call it careless that we weren't looking for that relationship that is very clear here in terms of how both frontages, you can actually see Jones Hall turn a corner, both frontages can be seen. This is a view from Johnston and Grand. You see Jones Hall here, you see our building here. It's a little bit taller, no significant change there. And then the view from Montgomery and Marcellus, interestingly enough, it is largely blocked now by Jones Hall. And so you can barely make out our building slightly on the right. You can just see a tiny little snippet of it. So by slendering the building the way we have, we're actually not allowing it to be as visible from this vantage. And so all these vantages were requested some time ago by Mr. Reedon, and we've just been updating them as we go. This is Montgomery and Bergen, same thing that I talked about from Montgomery and Baldwin, where you can, it's a little further down, but you can actually see the progression from Jones Hall to our building and the full front faces, north facing elevations in perspective. And then finally, just some detailed views of how we've modified the base to denotate that, I mean, it steps back still, but that the medical use has been seriously, substantially diminished. Now, why have we done that? If you remember, there was a medical practitioner from the Beacon who talked about, you know, how prepared we were for the medical use. I think we are prepared. We have dedicated parking for it. There will be some operational questions that we will have for the community medical tenant, which will largely be around women's health and reproductive health issues. This will not be an outpatient center or a trauma center or anything like that. And so I think that we have that fairly well under control. I'm happy to take questions about that. And then finally, one more view, and I will end the presentation with just two new views where you see the building from different vantages on Montgomery Street, both looking vaguely from the north and the west, but different perspectives of how you see this building. We're really happy with this. We hope the board will be too. And I look forward to any questions or comments you may have. So thank you. Actually, I'm going to try something here. I'm going to try to share a screen and show you very quickly these models, if I may. So hold on one second to this.
Rich, if you're able to show these, are these models on the plan set? Just
There's not a photo of them, but I brought them in the other day. What am I doing here? So I just very quickly, they've just gone, you can see from the side view of these models, the model that I'm holding in my right hand is much more slender than the model that I'm holding on my left hand. And so you get a sense of the changes. These were brought to the Beacon when we met with the community last week, and these were also shared in your office with Mr. Reedon. I know there was a comment before about the non-in-person meetings. It would be great to be able to share these with the board. Hopefully, this is doing what I'm trying to do here. So I will stop at this point.
Does anyone have any questions for Rich? Comments also acceptable as well.
I just wanted to start by saying that I think, you know, this is really much improved. I think you've taken a lot of our comments and really strengthened this. I think the, you know, this additional setbacks, the transition to the bar makes it much more in keeping with the Art Deco buildings at the medical center complex. I think it's much of the only thing that really caught my eye is if maybe you can bring your screen up one more time, but just up at the roof deck, there is some glazing up there, and I'm not opposed to glazing up at the roof deck. I just think that especially where your mouse is and the area where it gets a little bit higher, I think previously maybe it was a little bit of a stronger termination. And I would probably recommend playing around with that and maybe in a couple different ways.
Sure.
But other than that, I think it's greatly improved.
Thank you. The thought was, because there is a roof deck up there, that we would carry the brick motif up, as well as some of the decorative panels, and to allow for specifically the center and then the vertical elements just stepping away from the center to really carry, so you really read them vertically. We pulled glazing up that would be in the form of instead of pulling a parapet up, right? So the deck is still set back from there, but the idea is we need something there, and so we thought glass could be used. But I'm open to that, Brian, for sure. We could talk about that with staff.
And on the I guess it's the west facing facade, is that it's a little hard to tell in this rendering, but it looks like the one where we're looking at it from across Montgomery, it looks like that's masonry, but on the right it looks like it might be glass. So can you just clarify that?
Yeah, so I think that there's one of the things, let me just go back to that view. One of the things that we right, so the idea is that it is decorative ironwork that is, and you can kind of start seeing it here, that is in the front of the glass. So I think that amplifying that decorative ironwork, you don't see it as much here, might be a way to do that, but you see it on this the east elevation as well. So that's something, again, that I take your point. This is still hopefully not as much a work in progress as it was last time, but yes.
And just one other thing, and Jennifer, you may have talked about this at the beginning in your introduction, but there was a lot of testimony from the community and from the neighbors about this both of the last times. And I was just wondering if you can maybe outline the steps that you've taken to engage the community since the last meeting, just to make sure that we're comfortable that the community's been engaged as well on this project.
Sure. So since the beginning of this project, we've had several meetings with the community, I think 3 in total. After the last meeting with the HPC in March, we did work on the plan. So immediately following that meeting, we engaged staff at the HPC so that we could meet with them to kind of facilitate further discussions about boiling down all of the comments received from the commissioners as well as the public, so that we could begin working on revisions. We then reached out to the Beacon, the community members, which we had been in contact with prior to the last meeting at the HPC and had met with, and then had scheduled a meeting with them last week. So we went to the Beacon and we did meet in person with several members of the Beacon, and they did also send out a Zoom link for those who could not attend in person. It was close in time with respect to this meeting, but it was because we were continuing to work on the revisions all throughout the past several months in order to try and maximize the full amount of comments as possible.
Hi, Jennifer. I have a related question to that.
Sure.
It seems like you're making, you made some efforts to, discuss things with residents at the Beacon. What has been happening in terms of conversations with the residents at 591 Montgomery?
So we have an ongoing conversation with the community at 591 simply because it's under common ownership with this site. And so there's been ongoing dialogues with the property owner with respect to what is being proposed in connection with this site. Because it is a sister building to the Jones Hall building, we have obviously been in constant communication with our client and property owner, and then he too has been in communications with the residents of 591.
But I mean, have there been conversations with the architect that had the ability to discuss things with the residents, or is it always going through the owner, the property owner, whose proposal this is?
So we have had, on the basis of all of the prior meetings, we've had open communications. We have not had meetings specifically with 591, but we have shared plans with anyone who reached out in connection with or on behalf of the public or showed interest in connection with the application all throughout the course of the past several years of the project. This application has been on file with the planning department since 2019, and each of the iterations has been refiled with the planning department and with the HPC. And I think that this is the 9th revision.
10th revision. But if I may also just ask, answer that. So we have obviously ownership. It's a shared ownership, and ownership has made known to the community that live in 591 Montgomery. From my point of view, we've obviously spent a lot of time in the last 5 years in that building. And so there have been informal discussions, showings. I walked at a couple points, some seniors outside to talk about the building and how it would be configured. And I will say the thing that, as an anecdotal response to that question, the thing that they seemed most excited about was the fact, and I didn't talk about it here, but it still exists in the project, that we would have a dedicated 5,600 square foot, 5,600 square foot outdoor green area actually at the base of 591 Montgomery, at the base of Cornelison, which gives the seniors access to far more outside space than they have right now. If you have seen our site, what's interesting about it is there's a bridge that kind of crosses from Jones Hall to our site and then opens up to a little platform. But what we've been told is that people don't like going out there, especially when it's cold out, because it's wet, it's slippery, it's frozen, it freezes. This is something that building ownership has attempted to address, but genuinely the folks that I've spoken to anecdotally seemed, again, they've most latched onto this concept of this open amenity space that is part of our proposal.
Are there any questions, comments from commissioners? Any more, I should say. All right, hearing none. Does that conclude your testimony, Rich and Jen?
Yes, it does.
Great, thank you guys. All right, so prior to moving to public comment, I think we're about due for a break. It's 8:05, we've been going for about an hour and a half. So if it's okay with everyone, I think a 5-minute break is in order.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you all back here at 8:10. All right, it is 8:11, so we're back in order. All right, so we finished commissioner comments and questions, so we can move to open public comment on this application. If there are any members of the public in attendance tonight who would like to speak regarding this application, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. All right, I do see some hands popping up. So once again, I'll review public comment. Members of the public will accept an invitation to join as a panelist. You'll be promoted so that you can speak. You'll be sworn in, you'll state and spell your name for the record and provide your address, and then your time will begin. If you have any questions, please direct them to the chair, Mr. Gordon. At the end of public comment, we will address any outstanding questions. Right, same.
Maggie, I think for purposes of this application, to be consistent with the last time it was heard, we should shorten the length of time allotted to each speaker to 3 minutes.
Perfect, sounds good to me.
Maggie, do we need a motion?
I believe that's at the direction of the chair, but I don't,
Chair's
think-
prerogative.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's all
No,
good.
that's fine. Sorry.
All right,
Were you asking for a motion for public comment or a motion to amend the time period?
I was gonna ask for a motion to open public comment.
Oh, okay, never mind.
That's what I meant.
I'll
Open,
make a motion.
actually, public comment is still open from the March meeting, I believe. We never officially closed it.
That's our understanding as well.
Okay, all right. In that case, we do not need a motion for that. All right, the first name I see here is Nasrin. I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on. Great, we'll go ahead and get you sworn in.
Okay. And please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Please state your full name, spell both your first and last name for me.
Nasrin Nurizadeh, NASRIN
Thank you. And your address is, please?
4 Beacon Way, apartment 1012, Jersey City, New Jersey, 07304.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you very much for thank you very much for the opportunity and appreciate the changes that the architect and the client has made to the design. I just wanted to remind ourselves of the nature of and the reason that this community, this site was registered nationally and locally as a treasure. And so I think this is something that everyone should think about. I listened to earlier comments from the earlier project and the way people talked with pride and satisfaction about walking through the historic site of this beautiful city. And I share the same point. I moved from New York to Jersey City. I have been living in this at the Beacon for over 12 years. And I enjoy looking at this building. I talk about this building and its origin and how it started, how long ago it was built with pride, with everyone from colleagues to family members to friends to across the country, wherever I go. And I think we should save the integrity. Other than that, I also want to mention that regarding the height of the taller building around us, they are further away and they are in lower elevation compared to the Beacon. As you know, Beacon is on a hill and it is very much elevated, whereas this building will be in the same level. So it will be the same elevation and it will be, it will be more impactful than the ones further away, blocks away. So it's not comparable. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is the wind tunnel that it will create. Already we are facing the wind tunnel through crossing through the 4 Beacon Way. And that basically is going to be more impactful because it's going to create a huge shadow. It's going to cast a huge shadow on the 4 Beacon Way and create much more wind tunnel. We already feel like 10 degrees cooler when we cross that 4 Beacon Way to the building. And also, just if I may, I wanted to say that the tiering of the building from the south side is not going to be much helpful from our 4 Beacon Way, from the Beacon Way. If we could turn the building around and tier it up from the driveway from the Beacon Way, basically, so that it will be, basically as it goes up, it also goes back, it will be much more helpful for us to have less shadow and shade and also feel less, intruded. They did a great job rendering from the different sides. What was missing was the rendering from the Beacon Way so that you can see how impactful it will be when you walk through that walkway or driveway and how it's going to cast a huge shadow and huge, however you want to call it. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up for public comment, I see Eugene. I'm going to go ahead and promote you. right, Eugene, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Hello?
Hi. All right, let's go ahead and get you sworn in.
Mr. Kagansky, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name, spell your last.
Eugene Kagansky, Eugene Kagansky.
And your address, Mr. Kagansky?
4 Beacon Way, apartment 611, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Your 3 minute begins now.
Sure. I would like to share my screen. Is it possible?
What are you planning on presenting to the commission?
I want to show one of the renderings, so it will be easy to explain for me and for you to understand.
It's one of the applicant's renderings?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, you may share your screen. I'm gonna go ahead and give you permission to do that.
Thank you.
You should be able to do that now.
Okay. Let me know if you can. Oh, sorry. I don't think it allows me.
Try again. I promoted you to a co-host, so it should permit that.
No, it doesn't. Give me 1 second. Let me, can I cancel it and start again? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe try that.
No, it doesn't allow me.
All right. Maybe, hold on, Rich, are you, I don't know if you're able to, maybe I can have you share the rendering that you presented to the commission, and that way.
Yeah, that might help, although it will be hard to me to explain which ones. I took screenshots of 2 of the renderings.
I'll share. Should I share?
If you're able to, I think that would be the easiest and also the most consistent for the record. Eugene, is this the?
No. One where you can see the 3 towers from the beacon. 3 towers. No. Yeah, go back. No, just in front of the beacon. Yes, stop here. Okay, so you can see 3 towers, one next to each other, and you can see that the height of the buildings is going stepping down as it moves closer to Montgomery. Can everybody see? The high in the middle, then 1 step down, and then another step right to the green. You can see 2 steps. So yes. This is the same pattern for the 2nd tower and for the 3rd tower. So the proposed building is going to be standing in front of the 3rd tower, breaking this pattern. I hope it's clear from here that the 5-story last step, the 5-story height, is what the maximum should be permitted for the proposed building to fit into this compound, to fit into this beacon complex. Anything above that will break the pattern of the historically preserved site. Am I clear? Anything above the 5 feet, that is the last step of the first 2 towers, will break the pattern and will break the what we are trying to preserve here. So that's in terms of the height. In terms of the width from the Montgomery Street, it's hard to see here, but there was a diagram which showed the dimensions, again, from the Montgomery Street. Is it possible to show that diagram? Okay, if not, I'll verbally explain. The width from the Montgomery Street, you can see about 6 windows for each of those towers, 6, maybe 8 windows. That's the width from each of the towers. So the proposed building goes twice as wide as the 3rd tower. Again, it breaks a pattern of the 3 towers right? The first tower, second tower, and the third one, it's broken. It breaks twice, breaks the pattern. So the idea of that someone in the panel discussed in the commission during the last session that we had back in March is that the proposed building should fit in. It should not stand out. It should not
30
overshine.
seconds.
Overshine. So fitting this building in that place as it is currently in these dimensions, it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. I hope I outlined the width and height dimensions that would be fitting into the complex.
Great. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The next hand I see raised is Yolana. Go ahead and promote you. All right, Yolana, yes, you should. We just go ahead and swear you in.
Okay, Miss. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your full name, spell your last.
Yulana Zakalak, ULANA, Z as in zebra, AKALAK.
And your address is, please?
524 Clifton Avenue, Newark, New Jersey.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yolana, prior to your testimony, I just want to state that in the last public comment period, you'd been qualified as an expert in architectural history and historic preservation, and those qualifications remain.
Thank you. Yes, I was the historic preservation consultant for the historic tax credit project at the Jersey City Medical Center, which was the largest tax credit project in the country at the time. And I worked on that project for approximately 10 years. So I am very familiar with the former Jersey City Medical Center, one of the most significant architectural landmarks and historical landmarks in the city of Jersey City. And now this project is being shoehorned into our historic district. And I wanted to ask the commission, how appropriate is this planned new construction? Even though I think that the changes made by the architect are wonderful, they still are very effective to the historic and architectural quality of the historic landmark site. And one of the things that really concerns me, and Eugene and Nazreen both spoke about this, is how it's obscuring character defining features of the historic property. In particular, that third building that Eugene mentioned, the Orpheum, it obscures the facade of that building. And that is really not allowed in the guidelines of either the municipal historic preservation ordinance or the Secretary of Interior standards for new construction. You're not allowed to cover or somehow change, block the primary elevation of, in this case, the Orpheum. It also blocks the south elevation of Jones Hall, as mentioned before. Also, the new construction must be subordinate to the historic construction. And I think that anyone driving by or walking into the site will think that this building is part of the historic district when, even though it's within the boundaries, it's a new building. And I just wanted to really emphasize the fact that it should be subordinate to the remaining architecture, which is very vernacular Art Deco. Also, there's an impact on the view shed of the entire site, the impact along the Montgomery Street streetscape, which has been there since the 1930s. And that's going to change significantly with the building at the height it is. And speaking of the height of the building, it is neither the height of Jones Hall nor the height of the building it's blocking. So I think that it should come down to some more appropriate height. Also, historic landscaping. What this new building is doing is it's removing the landscaping that was part of Jones Hall. And that's a very heavily wooded, treed area that lends a lot of oxygen, greenery, and shade to the Beacon complex. And now that's all going to be destroyed, and the new building will be within 10 feet of the Beacon complex. So I'm just very concerned that nobody is talking about the impact of this building on this great historic site that we have and that we treasure. And I just wanted the commissioners to please think about this. It's going to block the Orpheum, it's going to block Jones Hall, especially that view from west to east. And it's going to change the skyline, the iconic skyline that you can see from the turnpike approaching the Holland Tunnel. It is just an incredible architectural landmark for the city of Jersey City. And this is going to be completely changed. So please give it some thought. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Bob Stein. Bob, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
There you go.
We'll go ahead and swear you in.
Mr. Stein, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your full name, spell your last.
Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T. Last name Stein, S-T-E-I-N.
And your address, Mr. Stein?
4 Beacon Way, Jersey City, New Jersey, 07304.
Thank you. Please proceed.
First of all, I would like to thank the
Is Mr. Stein
Robert
frozen
go?
for everyone? Yeah, hold on. I paused this time. Bob, I don't know if you've unfrozen yet. Just give it a minute maybe for his to unfreeze. I have his time paused for the record. Oh, okay. Looks like it kicked him off. Let's see if he rejoins. All right, in that case, if there's anyone else who would like to speak regarding this application, while we wait for Bob to rejoin. Oh, there we go. All right, Bob.
Well, I'm back.
Right. Okay, great.
I hope the minutes have not expired.
No, we haven't. We actually, you cut out right at the very beginning. We didn't even get a word in. So you start with fresh time whenever you're ready.
So I was saying, first of all, I wanted to thank the commission for their dedication. And I think that the new proposal is an improvement. However, it does not mitigate, to my way of thinking, the fact that the project is being shoehorned in a way that is incompatible with the historical nature of the site. And to give you an idea, if you, when I looked at the zoning tabulation for the two lots, and by the way, we have not even considered the impact on Jones Hall sufficiently as far as I can tell. The zoning tabulation for lot 1.02, which is the new building, has a maximum density of 150 units per acre allowed. They have 98. There is no density listed under the zoning tabulation for Jones Hall, but they have 100 units and their lot is much smaller than the one for 102. And it surely has a density that exceeds 150 units per acre. In fact, it's 100 units on something like a fifth of an acre. So that and to give you an idea, after getting rid of the trees and creating two lots, which together have about 40,000 square feet, maybe 41,000, where 60,000 was required for even lot 102. The two together have only 2/3 that, and we're going to have two skyscrapers on there. I feel that that's way denser and much more ambitious than is allowed or makes any sense historically for the site. Finally, I would note that in calculating the height of the 18 floors, on the application, it doesn't even list this as a variance because they say that 8 is the minimum number of building stories instead of the max. So if you look at their zoning tabulation chart, it should have asked for a variance for that too. But more to the point, I think they have consistently downplayed the height of the building because if you
30
look,
seconds.
okay, if you look at Montgomery, it's on a long causeway. Ground level is actually the ground level, which is going to include the first 3 stories of the new building. So the building actually is 21 stories above ground level. They only count from Montgomery. I feel that this is too much in too small a space. It's wiping out trees and it's not historically appropriate. Thank you.
Sorry, didn't realize I was muted. All right, thank you. All right, next up, we have Syed Abbasi. Go ahead and promote you. All right, Syed, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Unmute myself and turn on the camera. Okay. Okay,
Great.
hi.
Let's just, before you begin your testimony, we just have to swear you in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Abbasi, do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your full name, please, and spell your last name.
Okay, my last name is Abbasi, first name is Syed. I'm a very proud resident of Jersey City since last 50 years.
And what is your address, sir?
51 Terrace Avenue, Jersey City, New Jersey. And I'm a member of the Muslim Federation of New Jersey. We have building on 530 Montgomery Street. And I'm very excited about this building. It adds to the historical value of our city. And I think it's the best thing that is happening to Jersey City with all the historical and contemporary at the same time. And the whole community, whole congregation of our, community center is very excited about it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other comments?
As I said, I'm a proud resident and I would love to see my city going the way it is.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any, oh, I see another hand raised. All right, Christina, I'll go ahead and promote you. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and there we go. Great, let's just swear you in first.
And please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name, spell your last name for me, please.
Christina Noonan.
That is Noonan.
That's correct.
Your address is, please?
4 Beacon Way, Unit 502, Jersey City, New Jersey, 07304.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
I want to, mirror the comments of some of the other residents and other speakers here from the community around concerns about the height, width of the building. I do appreciate that the architect has taken a lot of that into consideration and slimming down the building. I think stepping back from some of the nitpicky points about height and width and variance and things like those are all very important. But I just want to say, as a member of the community, somebody who has invested in this in community in general, but also specifically for the Beacon, I chose to live here and invest in this because of the historic delineation of the building and the historic recognition of the building. We pay more in things like insurance and things like that because, you know, it's an older building and it has had a lot of history in and out of it and throughout the decades. I am speaking as that resident and saying I'm very disappointed that we're starting to see the encroachment of high-rise buildings. As much as they work to respect this building, they do overshadow it. This building is taller than is taller in many ways than Jones Hall, and it overshadows some of the historic buildings behind it to the south. And I chose to live at the Beacon because it's not downtown. It holds that historic landscape and community that's not the downtown Jersey City area. It's not even the Journal Square area that has lots of high rises. And I am saddened to see that this and worried to see that this may set a precedent for additional high rises to go around this building. Again, echoing some of the other speakers here that mentioned that, you know, this is a historic building. It has a beautiful, it adds to our skyline in a way that once high rises start going up around, we will start to lose piece by piece. So I'm saddened and, you know, just I'm bummed, frankly, that we're having this discussion where that these buildings are starting to become overshadowed by other tall buildings around it. So that's all I have to offer and appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. I see. All right, next up, I see Councilman Gilmore. Great, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Just go ahead and
Gilmore,
swear you in.
do you, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your full name for me and spell your last name.
Frank Gilmore, Gilmore.
And your address, Mr. Gilmore?
100 Eagle Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. I think to the question that was asked earlier from, I forget what board member it was with respect to the community input. I do want to commend the architect and them for having redesigned or reconfigured the actual project. But I think that we would have been able to get more, I guess, given and buy-in from the community had they been incorporated more in that process right there. Because I'm just sitting and listening, and residents have brought up some very intriguing concerns as it relates to this project. So I just wanted to propose to the developers and or the architects that is there an opportunity for you to sit with the residents? And I mean, you're not going to agree on everything. That's just the reality of life. But at the very least, if you can come to some kind of compromise as it relates to this project coming to fruition. And I share the sentiment of the residents because for so long, the concerns of the residents haven't been addressed as it relates to these buildings going up at a rapid pace, going up, these huge buildings. And all they're essentially saying is like, let us have a say on how our community is going to look, how our community is going to be shaped out. So I would just ask that that opportunity be extended towards the residents to try to figure out what, if any, is the best project that can go in this space. So, you know, that's what I have right now.
Great, thank you. All right, next I see Lamar. Go ahead and promote you. All right, Lamar, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. All right, let's go ahead and get you sworn in.
Okay, do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name for me, please, and spell your last.
Full name is Lamar Tenaire Auguste. My last name is Auguste, Auguste.
And your address, Mr. Auguste?
4 Beacon Way,
Okay, thank you.
07304.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Great. I guess if I could start, well, I guess the first thing I want to say is, I also want to thank, the board and the commission and its hard work and, its efforts. But if I could just ask, just with respect to the renderings, the rendering that was up like maybe 10 minutes ago, if it could be put up again, because I have a point to make regarding the rendering. This is the one on Montgomery Street, off of Montgomery Street, looking down towards downtown.
Rich, is it possible for you to share your screen again?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. Not that one. 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 I think if you go back one. Oh, I'm sorry. No. You're going down Montgomery. Not that one either. Sorry. The one on Montgomery going towards downtown. There we go. All right, let's go there. So a number of points have been made regarding the congruency of this building with respect to the overall project and its historic nature. Now, what this angle does not show you is if you were on the south side of the street and you're on Montgomery walking down, how prominent this building is going to be as it sort of sits out and stands out, across, or stands out with respect to the project is going to be significant. And this particular angle really doesn't show it, but if you're walking across the street on Montgomery, it's really going to be the most prominent portion of this project. And if you're walking down Montgomery and you're seeing this building, and it's really the most prominent element, that in the Rialto in front of you, but you can't see two of the other buildings, I think that's a loss. That's a loss to the architectural value of the complex. So that's the first point I wanted to make. I'm done with this slide. The second point is I appreciate the efforts that the Developers Council has made in sort of doing outreach, but as she admittedly stated, it was hasty. And they only gave like a handful of days, it was less than a week, it was like 4 or 5 days to sort of have the community congregate. That's not community outreach. That's checking the box. And a decision of this significance requires more than a check the box sort of effort. It requires real input from the community. I think a number of points have been made regarding the height and width of this building and how prominent it's going to sit on Montgomery Street. That's a conversation that we need to have with the community. And this is like a critical sort of discussion that needs to be had that hasn't been had. So just the point I wanted to make is this project is not supported. It's not supported by the community, and there has to be more dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak regarding this application? You can use the raised hand function at the bottom of the screen. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. All right, staff sees no hands raised and recommends a motion to close public comment.
I'll make a motion to close public comment.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so there weren't many direct questions that I think we would be able to provide answers to. However, I did during Mr. Stein's testimony, he raised a possible discrepancy on the zoning chart. Rich, I don't know if that's something that you can address.
No, Maggie, we are very much, have always offered that this is a D variance for height.
Okay.
And it is, we are increasing that ask by 11 feet to 214 feet. If I may, I would like to show a shadow study that to basically just speak to remind the board basically of some of the commentary that we had before. And this is a slide that has really not changed. Let me just I just had it 1 second, please. Yeah. So the shadow study that I have here, that can everyone see the screen?
I can't
No.
No.
Hold on 1 second, please. Maybe it didn't start again. Oh, there it is. How's that? There was some discussion about Beacon Way being put in shadow and the encroachment and things like that. And you know, look, we have met with the community. We've been meeting with the community on and off since the project's inception. In you know, I think the first meeting was in 2019 or 2020. Jen has the record. But the shadow casting, the building is on the the south side of the street. And so the shadow casting is largely going to be in Montgomery Street and across the street to the open right of way. And so in no time of day will we be casting shadows backward to the beacon or onto Beacon Way. And as you can see, in many times of year, the spring solstice, the winter solstice, it is the taller buildings of the beacon that put our building in shadow. And that's just to dispute some a comment about the shadow casting. I don't need to talk about this graphic anymore than that.
Rich, I noticed that shadow study was 2 and 3 p.m. and I noticed there were 9 other pages. Do you have those other pages? You could just page through them real quick for us.
I have an animation that I can play. I don't think I have. 1 second, please. Those are, Tony, those are the, I'd have to fish this out. Those are the most extreme times, which is why we showed them. We purposefully looked and just, as opposed to giving you a big grid, let me just see if I have access to the animation. I may or may not from where I am here. Yeah, so the shadow study, I'm going to just put up 3 images. Hold on. I put up the entire, what would you like, Tony? There are images, so I can put up the winter solstice.
I was just thinking you could page through it in 30 seconds, you know.
Yeah. So let me put up the spring solstice. And I can page through these and allow me to share my screen again. 1 second, please. 1 second. Apologies. I just lost my ability to share my screen. 1 second. There it is. Hold on. Okay, can everyone see what I'm sharing now?
Yes.
So this is March, this is March 21st, 2022 at 6:03 a.m. You see everything is basically in shadow. And as we move through the day, the buildings come round. So this is 12 p.m., 12:03 p.m., 1 o'clock p.m., excuse me, military time. And you see here, what's interesting about this one is you actually see the shadows of the towers that have been set. And then as we go into the afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, the buildings really do cast out and around. So I want to be clear, and we've imaged these, the sun is an absolute thing, that there really is no impact of our building on any of the buildings that sit south of us on this site. Tony, does that answer your question? Should I show something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, on the subject of the shadow study, one of the other comments that we heard from a member of the public was a concern about exacerbating the condition of a wind tunnel. Is that something you can speak to, Mr. Garber?
I think I was listening to that comment. So we hear that sometimes with other towers. I think she was talking about Beacon Way. And I can't really speak to the wind on Beacon Way. It's a fairly wide area. I will tell you that wind shedding on tall buildings occurs variably, and that's what we want to happen. You want the wind to kind of go in different directions instead of being channeled through ornament and through detail within the building. And actually, I would say, and I haven't studied this, this just came up, but being that we actually have now 5 steps in the building as opposed to 3 steps, right? We're telescoping it more. We're actually decreasing the surface area at any given section in the building. So we should be decreasing the amount of direct wind load as opposed to increasing it. We decreased it for sure from the former proposal. But I think at the ground at Beacon Way, I mean, I can't really speak to that.
Are there any other commissioner questions, or should we move into staff comments?
I would just ask for one last response from the applicant, because I think we heard a few comments about what some people felt was insufficient engagement with the community, and that the applicant had engaged in a box ticking exercise. So I know that at the outset there was some talk about efforts to engage with the community, but could you revisit that subject, because people do not seem satisfied?
Sure, I'm happy to revisit that subject. So this application was originally filed back in 2019. At that time, and even prior to filing, the applicant had several meetings with the planning department in order to discuss the proposed plans for the site and in order to facilitate conversations with the city about this project in this particular area. At that point in time, once the project, are you having issues hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Porter, it sounds muffled. Again, or you're speaking in a tunnel there.
Is this any better?
No.
Likely, but not.
What about this?
Yes.
Yes, much better.
I don't know why my settings keep changing. I apologize. So just to address community input and kind of engagement and discussions with the city throughout this project, let me go back to the beginning. This application was filed back in 2019 with the planning department, and immediately we began discussions in early 2020 with HPC and with staff. And also at that point in time, engaged the Beacon community. We actually had a Zoom meeting in February of 2020 with representatives of the Beacon in order to discuss the project at that point in time. That was right before COVID. Also during that month, we had an on-site meeting with representatives from the planning department as well as HPC to look at each and every building within the Beacon and walk and talk about the historical significance of those buildings as it related specifically to this site. As we progressed during COVID and through the pandemic, this project underwent several iterations based on additional feedback. We had our first appearance with the HPC in January of 2022. At that point in time, we've received significant input from both the commissioners as well as the public. We took all of those comments from the public, which all individuals from the public had an opportunity to comment during that initial HPC appearance. We ultimately decided that it was in the best interest of the project to adjourn so that we could continue to work with HPC and with the community, adjourned, and then for a period of 6 months, worked on revisions to the project. We then had a community meeting with the Beacon. So this would be our second meeting. That was in September of 2022. We then returned back to the HPC in March of 2023, earlier this year. And again, that meeting was open to public comment, and we received additional input from the commissioners and from the public. And again, at that point in time, we said, you know what? We believe that there is further room for us to take those comments into further consideration and potentially further better the project and take that community input back and put it into the project, which we did, which is what took place over the course of the past 3 months. We wanted to have the opportunity one more time to give the individuals at the Beacon a preview of what was to come prior to tonight's meeting so that they could see some of the changes that were put into place. But we have had multiple meetings with them. Moreover, all of the plans have been on file with the planning department. I specifically reached out to the HPC and worked with staff, gave them my contact information and my phone number, and any individuals who reached out to HPC were told specifically to contact me directly. Anytime any individual asked for plans or had any comments, they were invited to speak with us. We always gave them plans. We always gave them any input or answered any questions that they have regarding the proposal. And so therefore, we believe that the community input has been sufficient for purposes of this project. I do believe that there are some individuals, and they have every right to their own individual opinion, but that will not want any project on this site. And so therefore, it's difficult for us as the applicant to necessarily appease every member of the public. But we believe that what we've tried to do is address the majority of the comments and the majority of the main issues with regard to this proposal, other than generalized opposition in terms of them not wanting the project to be here at all. So with respect to massing, with respect to proximity to adjacent buildings, with respect to typology, with respect to impacts in connection with relationships of other building. We looked at green space and a variety of other things. And so all of those things specifically were incorporated into the design. There were some comments with respect to whether or not there's compliance with the guidelines. I believe that we previously walked through each and every one of the design elements of the site and how it is in keeping with the guidelines. We strongly believe that we've met and satisfied and done really all we can do to try and address and engage with the community. And I'll also note that we did also meet with many community leaders who have changed over the course of the past 5 years and had meetings at the local level. Always, yes, in response to their request. We've never once turned down any meeting request from any individual ever in connection with this project over the course of the past 5 years.
All right, thank you for that response.
So I just have a question, and this is really the same question I had, I guess it was March. And my concern is I can't see how I can reconcile this building in this location and this close to Jones Hall, if I look at my design standards, I look at 345-71, section H, subsection 2, section E, the relationship of buildings and structures to vacant land, and also section J, the scale of buildings. And it just doesn't seem like, and personally, if I was just to go on a personal level, I like the design of the building. I think the design of the building is much better than it was. And it's, it's slimmer, of course, but it's taller, and it shouldn't be that tall. I don't feel like I don't think it's compatible at that height. It's overshadowing other buildings in the complex. And this is an incredibly important complex. It's on the National Register, and it's, as people have said, it's probably the largest. Well, it's definitely the largest in Jersey City. But this incursion is, I think it's just, ultimately, it's still too large. I like the design. Like I said, I think Grow Architects has done a great job with the design, but I'd like to see the building on another lot somewhere else, not in the Beacon.
Should
for
we
me,
move it to staff? Okay, never mind.
I was just gonna say, I was very skeptical of this project, and I think the design changes have won me over. They've responded to our, I think everything we've asked them to do, they've done for the most part. I understand if you think that the site and setting is just too much for you to overcome, though, and I think, maybe there might be a few commissioners who think that. Along with you, Tony, I think that, essentially the design is compatible. The setbacks, the revised setbacks that have come in have made me think that this is something that I can support. And the other thing too is this is not a normal certificate of appropriateness. This is not in a historic district, a local historic district. And again, the planning board this goes to the planning board or goes to zoning board next?
Zoning board.
Zoning board. So they will have, the final say on this as well. So there will also be another, opportunity for the public to comment on this publicly, and ultimately they'll render the decision whether it's appropriate in terms of the zoning variances. But I can support this as is currently presented. Based on all the work that's been done over the last year and a half. And I think there's been some good efforts from Grow to do that has given my support to this.
Brian, I can see your point if this was an as of right condition. It's not an as of right condition.
And then it's two
I
not
also
as
think
of
of
right
the-
conditions.
Well,
Is the
and
problem
also-
with the subdivision itself as well, then.
Yeah, and also, I think of it as a slippery slope for other large lots with buildings that only occupy a small portion of the lot. It concerns me. There's quite a few other opportunities within the Beacon complex itself to do more of this. And there's quite a few other buildings in Jersey City that this could happen to. I just think it's entirely too close to Jones Hall. It's like a pencil width when you really think of it over 215 feet. What is it at the base? It's what's the distance at the base from Jones, Rich? Is it 20 something, 25?
Yeah,
31, right?
I can put up that it's 20 feet at the immediate base, and it's 65 feet at the top, and it steps away as it goes up.
Yeah. But two buildings, that building's 200 and some feet high, and 20 feet away, that's a pencil.
I want to.
I mean, to Tony's point, my thoughts on this are, we've had 3 meetings that I have been in, and obviously the architects have done a lot of work. There have been many iterations, and I think there are reasons for that, because this is a big challenge that maybe architecture can't solve. The tower towers in a park paradigm stops, it breaks down when you clear cut the park and put up another tower. And I cannot find this appropriate as presented.
I want to echo one thing Commissioner Blazak noted, which is the tremendous amount of work that the architects have done. And I think that is really something to be commended. There's so many things about this design that I find admirable. And you know, similar to something that Tony said, I would love to see this building built somewhere. But in good conscience, what's difficult for me is the site and setting issue and the relationship to vacant land and buildings. And if I just read the ordinance without even like thinking too much about, you know, all the ways that those can be interpreted, just a straight reading of it, I don't know that if you think about the relationship of those three towers, and clearly Holloway Hall being, you know, the most of concern because that's the one that's being blocked by this tower. Those three towers have a very special relationship to Montgomery. It has a topographical and a spatial relationship that is clearly part of the original intent that I don't in good conscience, I don't see how it's possible for this project to be able to respect that original intent. And similarly, you know, the void between Montgomery and the Beacon Towers is a highly designed void, right? So if we can all agree that this project as designed has a really strong relationship to the design of the buildings as solids, I think it's also important to remember that it has to have that kind of respect to the design of the voids of the space. And I think the way that this building interrupts the relationship of those towers to Montgomery, to me, is insurmountable. Just reading the ordinance straight up. So I again, as much as I love the design, and I've actually, you know, I remember when this thing first came up and I was kind of excited about the staggered windows. I know other people felt differently. I thought the relationship of the solid corner going up to the void, you know, glass corner, all brilliant stuff. But again, I don't know that this is something that architectural moves essentially can overcome. So, okay, so the Orpheum, that's, I was calling it Holloway Hall, but that may have been the older name.
Yeah,
You know, we just, sorry, one last point. You know, when we look at small buildings and we look at, you know, all the kind of rooftop, you know, additions and stuff, we ask for the view shed, right? Directly from a frontal relationship to the facade and not oblique, because buildings, you know, those buildings are intended to be understood frontally. There's a relationship between that front and the street. Similarly, I would argue that you know, these three towers have a frontal relationship to Montgomery that can't be overcome with an oblique view down Montgomery, you know, that shows, you know, all this space. And you've, you know, I do appreciate it. There is a great amount of space between the Orpheum and the project in an oblique view, but I think it glosses over the frontal relationship. So as much as I want to support this project, and I really do, I don't know how I can in good conscience, just given the reading of the ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, if I may just speak to that, I think I put up the overall site plan with the building heights. And, you know, look, I very much understand the concerns of the board, and we've been living with this project since 2017, you know, and I don't believe that architecture can't solve a problem like this. I think it's inherently an architectural problem. I will say that, you know, Jones Hall existing on the edge of this site, if you look in the plan that I have up, really does something quite interesting in that it actually turns on an oblique from the rest of the campus. And in my mind, starts a progression down Montgomery Street. In other words, it throttles your vision, right? And your vision is throttled. And I think that that actually supports this idea of the turnpike coming over, right? And so you really are kind of throttled down and made smaller and focused, not smaller, but focused down Montgomery Street. I think that our building is part of that spirit. And I think that, you know, when you blur your eyes and look at this, I don't have percentages of coverage easily accessible now, but when you blur your eyes and look at this, except for the fact that we have a little more line work in our building and in this site, you actually see that the buildings are close together, and then they open up. And I believe that what we are doing is putting a sister building next to Jones Hall. They are close together. They are within striking distance of other buildings that are in terms of proximity. And then we open up, and we open up to Beacon Way, we open up to the Great Lawn. And I do think that you do see those buildings set back in the Great Lawn. And that view coming from the east is really not significantly more diminished than it exists already due to Jones Hall being there. And that is something that we've studied. And it is something that we thought about in terms of should the building be set back more. And it really was the overwhelming commentary that we got from this board and from the community about how not only the bar typology should really be more forcefully studied, but that bar typology should begin to align with Jones Hall, right? And so I really do believe that that's what we've done. And I will also just remind the board, look, the other option is or not the other option, but the underlying zoning, excuse me, is really an 8-story squat building. And we've also studied that. And part of the reason why no one has seen that is because I can't in good conscience say that that is a more applicable solution, a squat square, after everything that we've gone through, right? The squat square disrupts everything. It's not typologically compatible. It blocks views on the ground. It covers more. It has less setbacks. And I think that this is really quite more appropriate, eons more appropriate than I think the building that could come as of right. And so I really would ask the board to consider that. I mean, we really, look, I know we can't make everyone happy here, but I do think that as a development site, and it is a development site, and there's not anything that any of us can do about that. This is a far better solution. And I think it's gotten more and more better given the interactions that we've had with you all than the as of right condition. And I really don't want to go to that as of right condition.
I want to acknowledge something, Mr. Garber, that I remember pushing when this first came before us. I remember the sort of horizontal sections that you showed across the entire campus. And I remember thinking that you had in fact demonstrated a counter argument to your own drawings and thinking, yes, that there has to be a bar typology solution here. And I remember pushing for it. And I want to fully acknowledge that the building has gotten infinitely better as a bar. And actually, and this is where I might sort of diverge a little bit from some of my fellow commissioners. You know, the relationship to Jones Hall to me is less about the height for me. It's more about the overall the way in which the project inhabits the void across the entire campus, not necessarily just in the kind of local hyper local relationship to Jones Hall. But I do want to acknowledge that you really have explored the potential of this project as recommended. But I have to say that at the end of that exploration, I think the conclusion for me is, as beautiful as the project is and as far improved as it is, I don't think it meets the requirements of site and setting and the relationship of void to buildings, just based on the project before us, without the ability to comment on hypothetical alternatives.
So it seems to me that, the appropriate structure would have to be much more modest in size. I mean, this current iteration we're reviewing today is unquestionably a significant improvement from the prior iteration. Ms. Porter, you indicated you felt that it's true, you can't make everyone happy, and you felt that there may be some who are just on principle opposed to the project. In listening to public comment this evening, I didn't hear what I would think of as a categorical rejection of any new development within the compound. I heard some pretty specific concerns about size and massing. And for example, Ms. Zakalak referred to blocking the primary facade of some of the historic structures, the Orpheum. Mr. Kagansky spoke about interrupting the pattern of 3 steps that can be observed facing Montgomery. And again, those are specific concerns that, let's face it, are the result of the oversized nature of the proposed structure. And personally, I was actually most struck by Ms. Noonan's comment that she didn't want to live downtown or in Journal Square, where high rises are popping up all over the place. And here we have a relatively unspoiled compound that is both historically and regionally, architecturally very significant. And so I think we need to be very sensitive to anything that we're willing to approve in that space. So I think I fall more in the camp of Commissioners Sandkamp and Gunther at the moment.
I would have to concur with my fellow commissioners, Sandkamp, Sakan, Gordon, and Gunther. I do feel that the building has been greatly improved, but I would, like Tony Sandkamp says, love to see it across the street, down the hill, at another location. I think it's a really beautiful building. It has some nice architectural features, but I just see the grounds around the beacon and this whole site as almost being sacred. And I don't feel that anything should be put there that is going to disrupt the site as it exists. I think if there were to be a building put there, it should be not visible from the Montgomery Street corridor. It just ruins it for me. And the fact that none of the seniors who live at the building next door, although we were told that the owner has reached out, seniors are not on computers. Seniors don't get email, a lot of them. They don't have access. They only know what they hear when they meet their neighbor in the elevator or such things. So I just don't think I can support this project as it's being presented. Thank you.
Do we want to move into staff comments?
Yes, please.
Richard?
Yeah, I'd like a minute, Jen. I think we should speak for a moment, if that's all right, if we can take 5.
I don't see a problem with that. Is everyone else okay with that?
Yeah, we can take 5 minutes.
Close enough to 9:30 anyway. All right, we'll see everyone back at 9:27.
Back on. Is Jen here?
It's
Yeah.
9:32. We're back on the
So
record.
we've spoken with the owner. We understand that this is a recommendation. I'd be willing to put up the as of right scheme for everyone to look at and hear some comments on that as a way of potentially spurring further discussion. And if not, you know, I think that that's what we'd like to do. I'd like to share my screen.
Okay. Rich, I assume that this is something we should be marking into evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, we can mark it. That's fine.
All right.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please.
Iris, I think this is A4.
Okay, so exhibit A4 has been
Yeah,
received and marked.
Yeah, we can.
So I start with this because I'm concerned that everyone's going to say, oh, this is the solution, right? It's smaller. It's doing everything we're asking it to do. And while I think from this view, this is, this is the image I wanted to show, where now this is an older elevation that you see behind it that's been improved greatly. But based on the underlying zoning that we as of right can follow, what you see here is an 8-story box, which would be as of right. And then we looked at potentially a 3-story setback on top to make it consistent with the first step of Jones Hall, right? So I'm concerned that this building in this context would be far too squat. We could still have some of the features, but you know, the idea of adjourning, coming back with this, I'm concerned opens up, even though this would be an as of right solution, opens us back up, excuse me, to the commentary that we've really tried in a very earnest and honest way to get beyond, going back to the bar typology and things like that, right? And I would say that the potential misalignment here, call it misalignment, is that you would get a squat 8-story box as of right on this site. And I am concerned, Jen is concerned, and our client is concerned that suggesting we can work with you on this would just send us back into another cycle, regardless of how hard we work, of comments. And I think the comments, many of the comments from the community have been addressed. I think many of the opinions of the community will not change. And I guess I'd ask the board for some guidance before you come to a vote, should we decide that now, in terms of if this is something that people think is viable. And mind you, what you would get is a drop in the skyline and then to go back up, right? So that progression up Montgomery Street, which we've been trying as a overall planning and site feature, would be completely disruptive. Still get the same amount of units in this as of right? We would just be removing the height variance from the from the zoning, and we would have a planning board to go to, not the zoning board, because of that.
What would be like the setbacks and lot coverage potential of this? Like, do you have a plan view of what this would potentially look like as well?
I don't, hold on 1 second, please. I have to look at what I have here. The setbacks would largely be, Brian, the setbacks would largely be what they were when we had more of a square, is really what I think that they would be. You know, they would not encroach more than they did, or within reason, more than they did. but you'd have something that really fills the site far more significantly. And because we obviously don't want to leave any density on the table, the ability to sculpt a building when you only have the 8-story height becomes far more difficult. And so I'm concerned. We're willing to work with the board. We've always been. I think the concern here is to try to go to a more as of right solution. Underlying zoning, I think, puts us back into a position of receiving comments that we were receiving for a couple of years here until we made these changes that we presented originally tonight. And I think that's the issue for us.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm speaking of someone who is more comfortable with the current plan than other commissioners. You know, I think it's hard for someone, someone who is maybe against us to have this change their mind without seeing more, on paper. But I think that a stubbier, squatter building would relate less to the site than the more sculpted building that Rich has come in with. But I can't speak for those who have
But
already
a
spoken out against.
a building that is as of right from a planning point of view doesn't necessarily make it appropriate from a historic preservation point of view. And we review applications all the time that are perfectly as of right from a density and planning point of view, but that we have to either turn down or recommend against because of its impact on historic resources. And
Understood.
From my perspective, which I understand is different from the owner's perspective by design, right? From my perspective, I'm looking at this from the perspective of protecting what makes the Beacon campus significant, not from the point of view of, putting X amount of square feet on this site.
Right. So my concern, and I appreciate that, but I'm just to let you know my concern here, because we want to, I feel very strongly we want to do the right thing. I feel like we are doing the right thing. But and I understand that we disagree on some things here. The issue I have is if we get a negative recommendation, my concern is that we will just go to the planning board with an as of right scheme. And I don't think that will be as strong a neighbor as still may have problems. Still, this scheme that I originally presented before you may still have problems. You may still have issues with it. But I think I'd be much more comfortable working with the scheme presented before you than the as of right solution. And again, the reason why I've never shown the as of right solution is because I don't think it is anywhere near as appropriate.
But you can agree that even if and I'm not saying one way or the other, but even if I agreed that the slender tower were a better solution than the cube, if I thought that the slender tower didn't align with the ordinance, the relative merit of one building form versus another doesn't make it doesn't pass the threshold of being able to vote to recommend it if I thought it didn't align with the ordinance, right? I mean, you can see how that's a conundrum, right?
Understood.
I think if I could just add too, that I think part of the difficulty of this lies in the fact that we're dealing with these guidelines and standards. But I don't necessarily think, I mean, we've focused on certain aspects with respect to certain guidelines or certain standards, but we haven't talked about others, which may very well be in keeping with the surrounding environment and that the project may be supportive of. And also we have to look at this project in terms of, you know, it does relate to, and I think one of the points that Mr. Garber was making is how it relates specifically.
Jen? While she's coming back, in no way, by the way, was I saying take it or leave it. I just am bringing
Right
to the board
condition,
the
would
concerns here.
Ms. Porter,
I think
you
we
dropped
lost
out.
you for about 30 seconds or so, I think.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so where did you hear until?
You were saying how even if we pick on one or two portions of the ordinance that we're not talking about all the other things that in the applicant's view that it does align with, that it does meet.
I think that, you know, it needs to be reviewed in the context of all of the standards for new construction, and that each individual requirement or standard needs to be considered separately in the context of the whole of the review of this application. And further, you know, in terms of zoning compliance, some of the difficulty of this particular application has been, you know, driven by the height. And so by reducing the height and bringing the project into zoning compliance, or by eliminating the medical use and changing the jurisdiction of the board, I think the question becomes, will we ultimately get a better product? It would be easier in the context of the proofs that we present to that board. But the question is, and I think that that's something is for consideration, is will that ultimately meet and further the needs of and standards with respect to new construction and the guidelines that we've been seeking to do with this project?
But Ms. Porter, I guess what the place that I get stuck is from where I'm sitting, I'm not obligated to pick one. I'm not obligated to approve one versus the other, right? I can deem both entirely historically appropriate or both historically inappropriate, right? And the merits of one relative to the other doesn't drive my vote. It's whether or not I think it complies with the ordinance.
I completely agree with that. I think my point is that if it's our understanding that regardless of, you know, what can be done in the context of trying to better the project in terms of trying to bring it into conformance with the standards, and you know, bring it in front of this commission so that you give it further consideration and potentially at some point support, that our concern, I think, and my concern is that some of the comments clearly to me are that no building would suffice in light of specific standards. And so therefore, the question becomes a legal one with regard to this being a development lot and there being actual zoning criteria that allow for it to be developed, and how that kind of relates specifically to the historic criteria that we're looking at. Whether or not,
Understood.
you know, we have to look at this in the entirety of the site, saying, are we saying that we as a commission don't want any development here?
So to be
I think
clear,
that's an important
and
consideration.
I can only speak for myself. To be clear, I am not saying that. What I am saying is I'm not designing it. I don't know how you're going to comply with site and setting and the relationship of vacant land to buildings. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a fair bit of daylight between not allowing any development on the lot versus not being able to necessarily build a building with the number of units and square footage that you desire. Should we have staff comments?
That's a question for you, Ms. Porter and Mr. Garber.
The owner would like to move ahead.
This is a rather complicated project. It is on the medical center site, which is on the National and State Registers, but it is not a municipal landmark site. And there are no encumbrances on the land. The applicant has come in and is filing a subdivision application, which will give them a developable lot. To not allow or to recommend against development on the lot, I would see as a slippery slope towards a public taking. When this first came across my desk, I was disappointed, to say the least, because I was afraid of the effect that the building would have on the site. And the project as presented to me in the first round was quite disappointing. It was metal clad, offset windows, open corners, not oriented to the street or really any other building. And it appeared to me that the Secretary of the Interior standards for new construction in historic districts and our own standards were only being followed in the breach. It was very definitely a modern building that you could very definitely tell was new, and it wasn't part of the original complex. And I had great reservations about that. And the architect went through each and every standard and tried to explain his design choices. This is the third time that this project has come before the commission. And these are public meetings, and this does count as outreach to the community. And based on feedback that the architect and the developer got from the commission and from the neighborhood associations, from people at public meetings, including these, the architect made a number of rather drastic changes. And I do think that Ms. Porter does have a point in that there is certain balance that we should be looking at here. Site and setting, are we looking at site and setting? Are we also forgetting to look at other paradigms on the site, such as materials? We brought up the materials. The materials were changed from metal to brick, a buff brick and cast stone, appropriate materials. Decorative features were added in based on a Art Deco motif. The architect looked at the building and gave it a rather grand entrance, trying to draw off of other buildings within the complex. When it was pointed out to the architect that the buildings were bars and not blocks, the architect provided setbacks, which I think if you look in plan, you're basically going to see the furthest extent to the base of the building. But as you go up, you are going to notice that there's significantly more airspace between these buildings. At least coming a little bit closer to the paradigm of separation of buildings. The height of this project has always been a problem. And its location has, quite frankly, been a problem as well. But this is a development lot. It is going to block off views of certain elements in the medical center site, especially, I believe, the Orpheum. Dental College will be affected, at least the views will. But there are also two other things to kind of think about. One is that the rest of the site will not be able to be developed on. There is an easement held by, I believe it is the state. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer. Ms. Porter, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's an easement that precludes any further development on the site.
On the remainder of the site, the entirety of the remainder of the Beacon site, with the exception of this property. That's
Yes.
correct.
So I don't think that we're going to be setting a precedent there. The other thing is that as the neighborhood surrounding the old medical center site is developed, we are already beginning to lose some of the views that we, hold as rather important. I do wonder every once in a while when we are no longer going to really be able to see the medical center as this massive modern creation looming over Jersey City because of other development that has taken place. I never thought I would recommend a tower on this site. But I think that as opposed to the smaller 8-story building, which will be a box, that the tower is more in keeping with the existing paradigm on the site. It's a small site. That does not allow for a great deal of a setback from other buildings, but I think that the architect has tried to step things back. The building is thinner. We can see more of character defining buildings. And yes, we are building directly in front of historic resources, but that's going to happen either as of right or in a different configuration. It is my professional opinion that of all of the designs that we've seen thus far, this is the most appropriate. It checks off an awful lot of boxes, many of which I've just gone through. I don't know if an as of right building will check off as many boxes. We'll be left with a box. And maybe it will have some cast concrete ornament and brick and such. But I don't know if that will necessarily be appropriate. And what I see here is a number of people saying this is a great building. This is a nice building. It's a lovely building. But just not here. This building is actually based on the immediate resources. Yeah, it's a great building on its own, but I think that in trying to honor the paradigm of construction that you see throughout the medical center site, the architect has tried to make this building subordinate to another vision for the site. This building, if it blends, it doesn't necessarily call attention to itself, at least not as much as the original iteration or iterations that we have seen up to this time. I think by choosing setbacks, materials, strong corners, less glass, and working with the familiar patterns of the buildings around it, the building becomes more subordinate. Is there room for improvement? Yes, possibly, probably. This is the third time this applicant has come before the board. And I think that the applicant has done a very good job of trying to honor what the commission has had concerns about and what the public has had concerns about. You know, from shadow studies to materials to openings within the facade, the relationships of planes to voids. Are there things that are probably not appropriate here? I think that site planning is difficult. It is going to be difficult with any building on this lot. And setting. Any new construction here is going to disrupt the setting. The question is, of all the intrusions that we have seen or could see, does this intrusion try to respectfully integrate itself into the medical center site?
Hey, Dan, one of the things you said that I actually thought about earlier was the state, you know, a couple people did say, you know, I think this would look better on another site, or, you know, maybe across the street would even be more ideal, but I think this building without the immediate context of the medical center would look, I don't want to say ridiculous, but it will lose its context. You know, I think it's gaining a lot from its context. It's clear, you know, inspired by, it's taking a lot of cues both from the entrances, you know, now with the windows, you know, being brought in from the corner. I think that actually on its own, you would be like, what a kind of a strange design for this building. You know, I think the context really improves this building. And, you know, I know it's not an either or situation, but, you know, I think the potential for an as of right development here would be too much like what was originally come in with the iterations, and less setbacks and being closer to the lot lines, and ultimately would, you know, I think I said this early on, that I actually thought even a slightly taller building would make sense to fit it in with the rest of the complex. So, you know, and I think your points are salient, and I don't know if you had more to add as well, but yeah, certainly the site and setting, like you said, is going to be disrupted either way. It's just part of the nature of a development here, and this is a developable lot.
Yes.
So I think with the context and the work that the architect's done, that, you know, I do think this is an appropriate solution for this site.
An architect that I had known once defined, and this is not a generally accepted definition of what appropriate infill construction is, but I think that it made sense at the moment, and it makes sense in this case. When you pass by a resource or a series of resources, and there's been new construction, you're going to notice that there's been infill. But does it come out and does it grab you? Does it assault you? Or does it kind of blend? Even if it just blends after the first visit, you know, the first time you see this, you might go, oh, wow, you know, that's different. Yeah, it's different because there's a new building there. But as you get used to it and used to passing it by, do you start to, if not say, oh, wow, this makes sense in context, do you at least not notice it quite as much? Does it take away from the character of the site? Does it harm the character of the site? I think there's a lot of room for discussion on this, but the applicants have really, and I never thought I would be saying this, really have tried extraordinarily hard to integrate this new construction into the existing historic site. And as historic preservation officer, I have been recommending to people how to integrate new construction into historic districts for over 20 years in this position. And I am at a loss for how to direct the applicant at this point.
Well, other than what they've already done.
Other than what they've already done. I mean, I have noted I've jotted down a couple of things, such as reintroduce the metal grills at the roof line to join the metal, to join the brick piers together. But those are very small things. I think that rather monumental effort has gone into trying to take the commission and the public's comments and integrate them into a new development. Other than what, and now I am not going to design a building, nor is the commission going to design this building. This is up to the architect. But I think that the design as it is presented is something that can be argued to be appropriate for the site. Anybody have any questions?
You have suggested conditions and but so you are saying that you feel that this is an appropriate application?
I feel that this construction is appropriate.
And you have conditions that you believe that we should approve it?
Yes. After tonight's testimony, yes. Some of them they're very simple, actually. I would recommend that we reintroduce the decorative ironwork at the roof deck instead of the glass panels in order to visually join the brick piers or plinths across the top of the building. I would also probably look at the cast concrete flanking the front door. The front door goes up 3 stories. The cast concrete goes up 2. It appears to be rather truncated. I do not know if this is part of the rendering, but I will have a stroke if the cast concrete wall out in front of the projected new construction is painted gray. Okay, that is not to happen. Other than that, I have to basically recommend approval with our usual conditions. That the architect, Grow Architects, shall be retained during construction, shall submit signed and sealed letter representing and noting that site construction was consistent with work approved under this certificate of appropriateness before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Details, specifications, and material submissions not currently submitted to and approved by the HPC under the certificate of appropriateness or changed during the course of construction are remanded back to the HPC. All physical material samples and specifications shall be submitted to HPC staff for review and approval prior to the submission of construction documents for permitting. Any changes or deviations from the approved drawings are to be clearly bubbled on the construction drawings and noted in an accompanying signed and sealed letter from the architect addressed to staff for review. Depending on the degree of change or deviation, additional review by the HPC may be required or requested, since this is a recommendation to the zoning board. And upon final approval of a resolution in favor of this project to the zoning board and a grant of the necessary variances and approvals by the zoning board, any deviations from the granted approval must be approved by the HPC, except in cases of emergency affecting the public safety, health, and welfare. Requests for deviations from the certificate are to be submitted through written request of the architect. Failure to follow these conditions may result in the denial of a certificate of occupancy. or the requirement that the applicant submit an application for the unapproved work before the commission in order to obtain a corrected resolution and recommendation for the said unapproved work. As I read through these conditions, I'm reminded that there are very few conditions on this because I kept detailed notes of all of our meetings, and pretty much everything that I was able to come up with has, at least in part, been satisfied by these drawings. And I do think that a taller, thinner, bar-shaped building is more appropriate on the site than a box. And that came through very clearly in previous meetings. If there are any other conditions that the commission thinks might improve the project, decrease its effect on adjacent property, on the site or adjacent buildings, I'd be more than happy to include them. At this point, I think that I would recommend that the commission, with the conditions that I just read off, take a vote to recommend this project to the Zoning Board of Adjustment in the form of a resolution. That the attorney would draft after a vote is taken. And we can vote on the resolution and memorialize it at the next meeting. Do any of the commissioners have any other conditions or thoughts or questions? That concludes my comments. Since there seem to be no questions, and it appears that the applicant has asked that a vote be taken. Am I right, Ms. Porter?
I haven't heard anyone else voice any support for this tonight, quite frankly.
But I am okay, I do apologize. But Ms. Porter, Mr. Garber, do you want to take a vote?
Yes, based on everything we've heard, we would like to proceed.
So then staff would recommend that a motion be made to recommend the project with the aforesaid conditions to the zoning board. The conditions will be memorialized in a resolution. The conditions to be memorialized in a resolution written by Ms. Porter, submitted to staff, and then memorialized or voted on at our next meeting in July.
And is there any other commissioner discussion? Anyone else have anything else to add? No, I'm just curious. Okay, I'll make the motion to recommend this to the plan or to the zoning board with the conditions as stated.
Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
Okay, we'll move to a roll call on that motion. All right. Commissioner Amatuzzo.
Okay, so after hearing staff comments and getting hit in the face with the realization that as of right can be far more detrimental to the site, I vote aye.
Commissioner Blazek,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Nay.
Commissioner Lewis.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you say nay or aye? I didn't hear.
Nay.
Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Sakong,
I vote nay, and I'll reference 34571, specifically the language around site and setting and the relationship to vacant lands, buildings, and structures.
thank you. I just want to note for the record that because this is not a local landmark, the reference technically is not necessary. However, it is appreciated. Commissioner Sankan,
I also vote nay based on my belief that 34571 H2E, the relationship of buildings and structures to vacant land, and H2J, the scale of buildings, has been violated in this application.
okay. Commissioner Garriga is absent. Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent. Chairman Gordon.
I vote nay, and I will cite section 345-71 H2 A for site and setting, E for relationship of vacant land to buildings and structures, and J, scale of buildings.
All right, there are 3 votes in favor. 5, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes against and no abstentions. The motion does not pass. At this point, if the commission is interested, you could make a motion to not recommend the application rather than just not instruct staff to produce staff to work with council to produce a resolution. Based on the amount of nay votes, that is something that would pass, or we could, that's from a procedural standpoint would make the most sense in this case, so that the zoning board has a recommendation to act on rather than just the non-passage of a recommendation, but I will leave it up to Chairman Gordon.
So I'll make that motion to recommend against approval, and as we've talked at length about the concern that building the structure as of right will result in something that we would never, potentially would not want to approve. Can we put in our non-recommendation, indicate something that any alternative structure has not been reviewed or considered by the HPC and may or may not be consistent with the historic standards?
Yeah, that's fine. So would you like, so the previous motion was structured
I think that it might be most appropriate if you are making a motion to recommend denial based on 34571, et cetera, site setting and such. I think that seems to be where the commission was going. I think that would be my primary focus.
All right, very well.
And then if you want to add in that this does not preclude looking at another variation, that would be fine, but I would start off with why you recommend denial.
In that case, I'll again cite subsection H2A, also B, E, and J.
Okay,
I'll second his motion.
all right. Made by Commissioner Gordon, seconded by Commissioner Sandcamp. We'll move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo, Paul,
I was muted. Aye.
Commissioner Blazak,
Nay.
Commissioner Cronin,
Nay.
Commissioner Sakong,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandcamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay. There are 6 votes in favor, 2 against, no abstentions. The motion to recommend against the proposal at 591 Montgomery citing 345-71 H2 A, B, E, and J is approved. Okay. Thank you guys for your presentation tonight. Sure, we'll be talking soon.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Good evening.
All right. So we have one more application on the agenda this evening.
And I will ask to be excused. So everyone have a good night. Be
Thanks,
well.
Dan.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dan.
All right. Well, we go ahead and call the last application.
All right, so moving to new business, I'll call case H23-105. The applicant is Central Signs LLC on behalf of Bright Street Partners LLC. This is for a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of a fixed sign at the ground floor of 16 Bright Street, a modern, non-contributing mixed-use building in the Van Voorst Park Historic District.
Okay, Vicky, I promoted you. You should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your microphone, and just let me know if there's anyone else joining you this evening that I should promote.
No, just me.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and swear you in. Oh, Iris, you're muted.
Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, Vicky, do you swear that the testimony you will provide this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name, spell your last.
Vicky Mejia, Mejia.
Thank you. And your addresses, please?
3590 JFK Boulevard, Unit 3.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
All right, Vicky, are you planning on sharing your screen?
No.
Okay.
We basically, our client wants to change the sign from having a 2-foot projection to a flat sign, which would be completely faced onto the facade of the building. And we're still going to use the same type of material, metal frame, and 6 brackets, which would be 2 on the right, 2 on the left, and 2 in the middle.
Sarah, maybe if you want, can you share your screen?
Yeah. Her. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Can everybody see my screen? Okay, so
Yes.
so this is what Vicky is referencing. If you had anything to add, Vicky, at this time.
No, just the client wasn't too thrilled with the 2-foot projection because he felt that it could not be seen from if someone was driving by or anything like that. So he wanted it flat completely onto the building, as you see the picture on the right. And we would still use the same form of installation so that it doesn't affect anything to the building itself.
So there's currently a sign there, right? And there is text at the valance of the sloped awning, correct?
Correct.
So what are the what's the size of are the size of the letters getting bigger then?
No, the sizing of the letters will not get bigger because we're staying within what zoning has, what I looked up for zoning to be appropriate. And we did take off the valance, which there will no longer be a valance since it's going to be a flat sign.
Okay.
So everything you see right there will be exactly what we presented to the client and what would be allowed.
You're testifying that this is completely reversible. And this is a modern structure, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, Vicky, anything else you'd like to add?
No, nothing else.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we'll move to public comment on this. If there are any members of the public in attendance who would like to speak regarding this application, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. Staff sees no hands raised and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion to open and close.
All right. Second.
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 All right, Sarah, you want to take it away?
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Late.
It's almost, you don't need to go into your why it's a late night for me, but yeah, that's fine. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so I will skip down to staff comments. If everyone can see my screen, please tell me if you can. Okay, so pros sign appears.
Oh, Sarah's frozen now.
Another one bites the dust.
All right.
I learned a lot tonight.
I know, Sarah, you broke up.
I don't, it's one of those nights apparently. All right, where did you lose me? I'll just start over. I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
No.
The proposed sign appears to comply with the signage standards outlined in 345-71M, which outlines the standards for appropriate signage in the downtown historic districts. The sign is appropriate for the size of the storefront and respects the size, scale, and mass of the facade, the rhythm of the window and door openings, as well as building height. Additionally, the sign is flush against the building and no lighting is proposed. In the HVC staff's opinion, the project as proposed will not cause an adverse effect on the character and/or integrity of proximate resources or the Van Voorst Park Historic District. HVC staff recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness with the following conditions, which are essentially our standard conditions, including that the applicant shall submit detailed installation specifications showing where and how the sign will be installed.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, does 345, what is it, 345-71M, does it talk about materials of signage?
Just says that they have to be historically appropriate.
Yeah.
I don't know that I find this appropriate because I find this is a sunbrella material, correct?
Correct.
I just don't know why we're doing it without. I'm fine with it as an awning, which is how it was approved. I don't know it's appropriate where it's essentially being, it's covering up a transom. And if they want to do something more like a sign band, they should probably put it above the transom on like painted metal or wood. I just, when is sunbrella ever used as more like a flat sign historically? You know, that's my thought. I mean, maybe it's a rhetorical question now, but I'm fine with this as a projecting awning with signage at the valance, but I find it just a very odd solution here.
Can staff comment about, can I get staff's opinion on how this meets or doesn't, language about any sign placed upon a building? Sorry, other signs which shall not be permitted are signs placed upon a building that conceals any window, opening, door, or significant architectural feature. Technically, we're concealing the transom.
Concealing the transom, taking in consideration that was in place of an awning originally, and that it is a modern non-contributing structure, sort of following along that thought process. And that it is ultimately reversible.
I mean, I get what the point that Brian's trying to make. I'm just looking at sort of the image with the building, and I don't know if the building is designed where there really is space for a sign band that would maybe not detract. Not really sure what the best solution is, but I
Yeah.
do see I do see the point about blocking the transom.
Maybe maybe there isn't room for a sign ban, but I don't know. I'm just going off what I'm seeing, and I'm fine with an awning, which is what we approved previously, I believe. It's just
Yes.
this seems like a very strange solution to me.
I think
see
for
your
me, it's
point,
kind of,
Brian.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I see your point, Brian, about having a sunbrella fabric, which basically is now a sign and not an awning. I could see where that is a strange application. That's all I wanted to say.
Can we make a condition, and when they approve, would they use a rigid board on the same frame?
I can add that.
Well,
condition.
I don't know that that's
I don't know, Vicky, if you
appropriate.
are.
Well, that's maybe tricky because now you're creating a sign band where people will just change out lettering as opposed to canvas that has to be reclad.
We've done signboards in the past for other companies. I mean, it's something that we can probably do a rendering for and see how it looks and submit it.
I'm sorry to ask you to repeat something that you've already explained, especially the late hour. Can you just you said that the awning that was originally approved, the owner wasn't happy about, so they wanted to flatten it. Can you just explain that a little bit further?
Okay, aesthetically to him, you couldn't see the company's name when you're passing by in the street in a car or walking. So he wanted to flatten it out, take out the projection and have it up against where we put it at.
Yeah.
So that it can be seen, because he said no one could see the name of the real estate firm. And he was not too thrilled with it at all.
Well, I guess that's why I asked if the letters were getting bigger, because if there's a problem with that, I thought maybe that was part of it, is that like the letters were getting bigger and that maybe that would make sense. And it's, I don't know, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the best way to proceed with this.
Well, I don't know if it's preferable to potentially cover up that horizontal band right above the transom, because I suppose then the sign would project out a bit more, but then you'd be covering up one feature for another, and it is narrower than the transom, so it gives you less to work with. I don't really have any strong feelings about the placement, but yeah, I mean, the material choice does seem unusual.
I mean, that area in between the first floor and the retail space is just plain masonry. It's not like there's this brick corbelling. So it's not like, it could even be like pin mounted letters into there. I don't know. I just think this is a very odd solution, and I just don't think it's in keeping with any type of historic signage. It reminds me of like a temporary banner sign
Right.
that is going to be saying for rent or like a new business or something, and I just can't support it as is shown.
Or any other commissioner comments, questions for staff? Brian, if it was is your, I know, so your primary concern is the material, not the placement? Or is it really just both the materials?
I think it's both. I think an awning is fine because it projects out and it doesn't totally cover up the transom. I think if it's going to be more like a flat sign, it should be located above there in that area in between the first and second floor, kind of that you more see is typical of a retail space.
Okay.
I mean,
I agree with Brian.
Makes sense.
I think an awning made of fabric not covering the transom would be way more acceptable than what is being presented, or move it up between the course of the first and second floor. And that's it.
what they have now is that.
Well, if we gave them approval to do that, then they'd have to go back to the owner of the building and see if it's okay, most likely, right? I'm going to say that, but we could give them that approval, and then if they can't get approval to do it, then they could come back to us.
We can't approve a design that we're not seeing, that we're all making up in our heads. It would have to come back.
Yeah.
We could potentially give staff broad latitude to resolve it at the staff level if we give them some parameters to work with.
I would be hesitant to do that. The ordinance is pretty clear that exterior applied signage to buildings needs to be approved by the HPC. So if we have nothing, it would be one thing if we had like something to look at. But if we're changing the materiality, the placement, the installation method,
everything is changing.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to do that. I understand the intention behind that, and in a perfect world, I would totally jump on that. I just think that I can't believe I'm saying this. It's giving too much latitude to staff, and it kind of goes against the spirit of the ordinance there.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think maybe the move here would be for Vicky to go back to Sarah, you can also jump in whenever you want. I'm just rambling. It's late. To go back to the tenant and explore either possibly moving the sign up, moving back to an awning, and we carry this application to the next available HPC meeting.
Or would others feel the same about this if the signage fit into the center transom, so it didn't block anything, and it was a different material? It's like a board. It'd be smaller, but it'd be where he wants it.
They could also put like vinyl. Can't they do like vinyl letters in there too?
Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Like put vinyl letters in the transom.
To me, even if you fit it in the light directly above the double doors, if it's a full sign, It
Mm.
blocks, it blocks the window opening, which is clearly what the ordinance says we can't do. If it's vinyl lettering, then it's just an application on the transom itself, and I would have no problem with that. But again, you know, that's not what's in front of us. All right. We've had a lot of conversation about sort of hypothetical alternates, but and I know this is not the same scale, but I think we can only review what's in front of us.
Well, even if this can't be approved at the staff level, I'm confident that having been engaged in this conversation, staff can find something that would probably most likely be acceptable to the commission, and then hopefully we can put this at the top of a meeting and dispense with it quickly.
Agreed.
Are we tabling?
You know, motion to carry, Maggie?
Yeah, we would just carry to the next available meeting date, as long, Vicky, as long as you're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion to carry.
So late for this, Vicky.
Second.
All right, I have Tony, I have Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so this is carried to the next available meeting date, so we'll be able to schedule this in old business at the top of the agenda when we're able to, or when the applicant gets back to us. So whichever's first.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a good evening.
thank you so much. All right, sorry. All right, let's close. Oh, what is my mouse? All right. Okay. So table case updates on table cases. 11 Erie Street got their formal notice saying that they have to give us some kind of update, or else we're going to make a motion to dismiss. Just as a reminder, they've been carried since August. They did not actually present at that August meeting. They were scheduled and were never heard. 289 Pavonia they're working on revisions for that. And 247th Street, I had a meeting with the architects the other week. That will be coming back probably in August. If this is the June meeting, that'll probably come back in August. They've reduced the bulk of the building, they've reduced the density of the building. And they've also increased the setbacks there. So hopefully they've made quite a bit of changes, or at least they've said that they've made quite a bit of changes. We don't have plans yet. So hopefully we'll be able to see some movement on that one. All right. Any questions on any of those? Cool. All right, we have no resolutions to introduce or discuss, no resolutions to memorialize. We do not need an executive session, so that just leaves us with adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, it is 10:45 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks all.